A lone spoon sinks into a bowl of murky food with a dull plop, signaling the start of a cold and solitary meal. The boy sighs that his father is just a bit weird before hauntingly telling his friend that she does not know how lucky she is. The girl stares back with intense dark eyes and demands to know in what sense as her shadow looms over his nervous frame. She snaps at the boy to stop and treat his father well while he is still around, leaving him stunned into silence. The boy stares down with his face hidden in shadow as he bitterly repeats that she does not know how lucky she is. The girl watches him with worried eyes, thinking she may be overstepping, but recalling how terrified his father was when he was hospitalized. A crumpled tutoring flyer rests in his hands while his father stands nearby with an unsettling and desperate expression. The father wears a cold, artificial smirk, and the boy responds with an eerie smile that reflects his father's obsessive nature. A girl's face fills the frame, her eyes sharp with judgment as she thinks that this girl knows absolutely nothing. The boy's face contorts into a terrifying mask of rage as he screams that some parents are truly harmful to this world. The boy bitterly wonders how the girl can judge his life when she clearly grew up in a perfect family. Hiding his internal pain, the boy murmurs a hollow apology and turns away while an elderly man watches him from across the train car. An elderly man grumbles with disdain, clicking his tongue and complaining that today's youth show no respect for their elders. The boy stares ahead with hollow eyes, silently hardening his resolve as he mutters a retort about the old man's physical state. The old man sneers at the youth, claiming that being young does not equate to health, and blaming the education system for their lack of knowledge. As the boy scoffs about useless school subjects, the old man continues his rant while nearby passengers whisper in confusion about his strange behavior. Jin stares ahead with cold, hollow intensity as the confrontation between the man and the elderly passenger begins to boil over. The antagonist leans in close to taunt the old man, mockingly asking if he wants a taste of youth. The old man flinches in shock, but the antagonist coldly reminds him to mind his manners because they are currently in a public space. Jin stands his ground, retorting that he has more decency than judgmental elders, resulting in a tense and silent standoff. Jin sits alone in heavy silence, his downcast gaze reflecting deep internal turmoil as he tries to ignore the suffocating atmosphere. A tall, overbearing man looms over Jin, rudely asserting his presence within the boy's personal space. The man taunts Jin about his father's G Corporation power, pressing him about the rivalry between their families as the train rattles through the night. Jin snaps back at the man's insults, firmly declaring that his personal affairs are none of his business. The man looms over Jin, sneering that they belong to the same social class and he will continue to invade his space regardless. As the train rattles, the man mocks the silent boy, questioning his lack of fear and suggesting that his quiet demeanor hides something. The man feigns a polite apology before commanding Jin not to be nervous, mocking him with a cruel, derogatory slur. Jin blankly states that he does not talk much, but the man smirks, gloating that he successfully forced the boy to respond. The train rattles as the tall man looms over Jin, demandingly asking for a moment of his time with predatory intent. Jin stares up with guarded eyes, his silence reflecting the suffocating pressure of being trapped by a man who ignores his boundaries. The tension shifts to a gym where the man delivers a thunderous wham against the punching bag to intimidate Jin. As they strike the bags with rhythmic thuds, the man's aggressive force contrasts sharply with Jin's desperate attempt to keep pace. A sudden heavy thud echoes through the empty gym, causing Jin to look up with startled eyes after a loud POW impact. The taller man breaks the silence, mockingly asking if the gym is failing while an abandoned exercise bench sits nearby. The man sighs while drinking, noting the empty gym, which forces Jin to process the unexpected mention of Manny Kim's name. The man smirks while describing Manny Kim as a wealthy elite fighter, causing Jin to narrow his eyes at the bully's reputation. The two stand in the silent, dimly lit entrance with the looming man casting a shadow over Jin as they part ways. The man yawns and suggests grabbing a drink, while Jin stares back with a hollow, haunted expression. The man arrogantly invites Jin to chase girls, but Jin retreats into himself and coldly refuses the offer. Jin stares ahead, firmly repeating his refusal while remaining locked in silent misery, unmoved by the man's hollow attempt at camaraderie. The older man walks away, warning the boy to act like strangers at school or risk being killed. The bully looms with a predatory smirk, while the boy remains frozen, staring back with hollow eyes. Despite the man's bullying, the boy struggles to swallow, overwhelmed by his intimidating presence. The boy suddenly calls out for him to wait, causing the bully to stop and turn back in surprise. Standing alone in the dim light, the boy trembles as he makes a desperate plea, shouting, "Teach me!" The bully pauses and looks back, clearly confused by the boy's sudden and unexpected outburst. He turns to face the boy, his expression turning annoyed as he coldly asks what he wants. With eyes burning in desperate intensity, the boy shouts with shaking conviction, "I want to become stronger." The bully stares back, his eyes narrowing as he reflects on the boy's surprising and bold challenge. The boy breaks the tense silence, looking up with desperation as he firmly commands, "Teach me." The older man stops in his tracks, casting a skeptical, icy glare back at the boy in confusion. The boy hesitates with a troubled expression, visibly struggling to find his words as he mumbles, "I..." With a sudden burst of raw intensity, the boy screams, "I want to become stronger." The older man turns with a chilling, unreadable stare, his gaze piercing through the silence to judge the boy's desperate request. A gust of wind whispers through the desolate space, heightening the heavy anticipation as they stand frozen in the evening air. Separated by the concrete path, the two figures stand like rivals in a standoff, waiting for the tension to snap. The silence hangs heavy until the older man lets out a mocking, dismissive scoff, shattering the boy's fragile hope. The boy stands frozen in shock, his eyes wide and trembling as he reacts to the man's cold disdain. The older man erupts into a cruel, booming laugh, mockingly echoing the boy's plea while the kid stands helpless under his ridicule. The man sneers, mockingly asking the boy if he thinks he is living in some cheap school comic book. The man turns his back and walks away with a cold, rhythmic stride, leaving the boy frozen in silence. The man looms over the terrified boy, grabbing his shirt in a tight grip and calling him a reject. Holding the boy firmly, the man threatens that he would be buried if not for his father. The boy stands paralyzed, his wide, trembling eyes reflecting the sheer hopelessness of his situation. The man pushes the boy away, cruelly dismissing the idea that they are friends after such a short time. The man stares down at the boy with icy authority and coldly commands him to get on the ground. The man sneers at the cowering boy, ordering him to get on the ground like a dog. Towering over the trembling youth, the man issues a final stern warning that he said to get on the ground. As the man begins to threaten him further, he suddenly freezes in shock when the boy stops moving. The man towers over the boy, whose head hangs low in an eerie stillness that begins to unsettle his cruel dominance. A shadow of dread crosses the man's face as he freezes, sensing a chilling shift in the boy's submissive posture. The man's eyes widen in realization as he sneers, "I knew it! You were not normal!" detecting the danger behind the boy's blank stare. Stunned by the boy's sudden, eerie stillness, the man recoils in confusion, letting out a sharp gasp into the suffocating air. Looking down with a breathless expression, the man coldly admits, "I have to admit, you have courage," his dominance replaced by unease. The businessman muses to the reporter that wealth breeds greed, explaining that this internal conflict is why he commits to charity. The woman smiles, impressed by his generosity as he cites a biblical verse about the importance of securing a future for the youth. The businessman details his plan to fund school costs and transit, leaving the woman shocked by his extraordinary kindness. The man offers an inscrutable smile, deflecting her praise by saying he is flattered while suggesting he is not the only one. The woman leans in and blushes, asking to mention his elegance because she finds him to be such an attractive man. The man chuckles dismissively and suggests that a stylist might help successfully steering the conversation away from himself. The woman smiles with sudden intensity and whispers that she better find one, while the room fills with the man's ominous laughter. Alone in the silent room, the man exhales a weary breath while sitting shirtless, his back muscles tense with the burden of his secret. With a mechanical motion, he crushes his cigarette into the ashtray, the sharp sound echoing the finality of his decision. He stares into the shadows where a mysterious woman is silhouetted against the light, his gaze filled with calculated intent. As water runs in the background, he murmurs while inspecting a stolen identity card, his eyes narrowing as he uncovers a new clue. He examines the identity card, realizing she is 24, and mutters to himself about her young age. With a predatory glint in his eyes, he leans back and whispers that she likely has a soft spot for older men. The door creaks open with a sharp sound, followed by the soft, rhythmic tap of an ashtray hitting the table. Bare feet step onto the floor as the woman emerges, draped in a towel, and apologizes for the wait. The man offers a reassuring smile and tells Miss Yoon not to worry, masking his true intentions behind a facade of gentle composure. Miss Yoon brushes back her hair, blushing with nervous anticipation as she asks if she can come closer. He closes his eyes in silent triumph, savoring the anticipation of the trap he has set for the young woman. The woman stands before him in wide-eyed innocence, completely unaware of the darkness surrounding her. He shuts his eyes tightly, his face hardening as he prepares to spring his final trap on his unsuspecting victim. With a chilling sense of control, he dismissively whispers, "Of course," finally tightening the grip of his dark design around her. A modern building looms in the dawn light, while the exhausted girl lies motionless beneath heavy white sheets. He stands with his back turned, his rigid posture radiating a cold silence as he looms over the sleeping girl. He studies her sleeping form with an intense gaze, silently contemplating his next move while she remains completely vulnerable. Disgusted by her snoring, he stares down at her with icy contempt just as his phone begins to vibrate. The man glances at his buzzing phone with a cold hum while preparing to finalize his next move. With deliberate silence, he takes a slow step toward his target, cutting through the quiet tension of the room. He adjusts his suit jacket with a sharp, predatory motion, ready to act on his dark thoughts without mercy. Looming over her, he whispers, "I must pay a visit to the real one," while she remains oblivious to the danger. A chilling sign on the wall warns that the Jianquangqiu loan agency will find anyone who tries to run. The girl gasps for air in a bleak alley, clutching her chest as she struggles with the weight of her impossible situation. Under the dim streetlights, the woman cruelly goads the hesitant girl into making an immediate, desperate decision. The boss mocks the girl's hesitation, forcing a choice between a demeaning part-time job or sacrificing her pride for easy money. The woman looms over the girl, sneering that she is too busy to be bothered if the girl refuses. Terrified, the girl whispers that she will decide during the week, prompting the woman to bark at her to leave. A crumpled piece of paper falls to the ground, symbolizing the girl's crumbling spirit and the loan agency's tightening trap. Clutching the paper with trembling hands, she stares into the darkness and mutters that she can handle any job. Looking at the sky, she forces herself to believe that any work will suffice if she just keeps her eyes closed. She stares ahead with a hollow expression, her face mirroring the desperation of someone trapped in an inescapable nightmare. A forced smile touches her lips as she whispers to herself that everything will be fine despite the obvious lie. The silence shatters as someone pounds on a glass partition, shouting that they hope she is only joking. Towering over the exhausted trainee, the mentor demands with cold intensity, "Is this the most you can do?" Panting heavily, the girl struggles for breath and asks if they really must continue, her body trembling from extreme fatigue. The man sneers at her weakness, mocking her for having such pathetic lungs despite not being a smoker. He coldly orders her to step aside and delivers a powerful, rhythmic blow to the heavy punching bag. He watches her with a hollow gaze, acknowledging her hidden strength despite her broken and worn-down appearance. He coldly orders her to try again, and she obediently agrees, preparing to face the heavy bag once more. She strikes the bag while he sharply critiques her form, yelling at her to keep her eyes on her hands. Their training is interrupted by his buzzing phone, and he scoffs at a text from a girl he finds crude but wealthy. The girl hesitates, her eyes wide with nervous apprehension as she tentatively breaks the silence to speak to him. He remains cold and detached, staring blankly as his phone vibrates until he finally snaps. "Huh? What is it?" at her. Summoning her courage, the girl asks him if his way of making money involves a part-time job with those women. He looks at his phone with indifference, showing the caller named Ugly and asking her if that is what she means. The man grins with a predatory edge and coldly commands her to come with him. Trembling at his dark demand, the girl looks up with wide, haunted eyes in confusion. A dilapidated, shadow-drenched barn looms under the twilight sky as the site for their inevitable confrontation. The girl stands small and vulnerable within the dark, cavernous structure swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere. The masked figure confronts them coldly, asking if they cannot pay for the goods from the other day. The man smirks with cruel satisfaction, bluntly telling him they will not pay a single cent. When the stranger asks why, the man reveals his sinister curiosity about how the stranger obtains so many women's organs. The man mocks the stranger's solo work, while the stranger presses him to identify the real problem with the fresh goods. The masked stranger sneers at him, to which the man retorts, "Hey, big guy." The stranger flicks a note onto the ground and chillingly declares, "This is the problem." The man stoops to retrieve the paper, his eyes widening in shock as he sees what it contains. Holding up a photograph, the stranger mocks him, saying, "This is our payment for such a hobby." The man stares from beneath his cap, his face hidden in shadow as he observes the two figures. One figure sneers that they do not need money while the other insists, "We are still counting on you for free." The man remains silent and tense as he stares back, the air thick with unspoken threats. A sinister man smiles with empty eyes and asks, "Your answer," as the other slowly removes his hat. The man stands in the dark, offering a cold and final, "Certainly," sealing his grim commitment to the deal. Two enforcers loom in the shadows, sneering that the man no longer needs money and still expect his free services. A heavy silence hangs in the air as the man's shadowed face remains unreadable, hiding the weight of his impossible choice. The hollow-eyed man stares with a predatory gaze, demanding to know if his target has finally reached a binding answer. Removing his hat in final submission, the man locks eyes with his captors and calmly whispers, "Certainly!" The man wheezes in agony, his pained whimpers of "UGH" echoing through the oppressive void of the dark barn. He coughs violently while clutching his blood-soaked chest, falling as the cold killer watches with icy indifference. The attacker pins the victim to the ground, chillingly declaring, "I usually don't kill men," leaving the man in petrified terror. With a blood-splattered smile, the killer sneers that he is sorry and warns him to think carefully before speaking next time. The oppressive silence of the barn is broken by a haunting statement: "This is not a stupid pastime." The killer looks down with a blood-stained grin, chillingly whispering, "It is something much more sublime." The dying man begs for mercy, but the killer mocks him, revealing he provided the goods for pleasure rather than money. The killer justifies his horrific violence as a beautiful goodbye, screaming that it is love as the victim lies broken. Standing over the cooling corpse with a blood-smeared face, the killer chillingly whispers that it is pure love. The scene shifts to a dim corridor where a woman sighs and asks a young girl if she has decided to do it. As music thumps in the background, the girl meekly confirms her decision while the woman guides her toward the changing area. The woman tells the girl she can change in the back, but pauses mid-sentence, causing the girl to look back and ask yes. The woman stares coldly at the girl and warns her to keep her age a secret, to which the girl meekly agrees. Neon lights cast a harsh glow over the urban exterior as the girls prepare for the night's grim business. A group of nervous girls stands in a line while the woman introduces them to three men who eagerly inspect them. One man leers at the youngest girl with predatory curiosity, noting that he has never seen her here before. The woman smiles mockingly at the customer, introducing the new girl as a prize, saying, "Wow, you're awake, sir. This is a new one." Yuna gulps with wide, fearful eyes, stammering, "It might seem a bit strange, but isn't she cute?" while masking her true anxiety. Yuna trembles and whispers, My name is Yuna," while a man questions if she is a minor, noting she looks far too young. The predator declares, "Who cares? She is adorable. I choose her," as the woman pushes Yuna forward, warning her not to mess up. Yuna gives a forced, shaky smile and simply replies, "Okay," as she faces her frightening reality. A nervous man leans in, questioning her age and asking, "Tell me the truth, you're still a student, right?" The man shrugs off her denial with a smirk, saying, "Whatever you want, at least you're cute." The man grins greedily, admitting he visits often but has never seen a girl as beautiful as Yuna here. Yuna stares ahead with a hollow expression, bitterly thinking that if she could afford plastic surgery, she would never be trapped here. The predator whispers that her silence is acceptable as his hands begin to squirm against her, forcing a stifled gasp of fear from Yuna. The man's hand creeps boldly onto Yuna's leg, leaving her paralyzed with dread as she realizes she cannot escape. Trapped in his suffocating embrace, Yuna stares into the distance in wide-eyed shock, overwhelmed by her dangerous situation. Yuna stares into the void with hollow, terrified eyes, wondering if she should just let him do this. Her mind races with helpless panic as she struggles to decide how much she should allow him to do. The predator's hand crawls across her skin with a sickening rub, leaving Yuna trembling in total vulnerability. Yuna's eyes widen in stifled terror as the crushing reality of her trapped existence shatters her spirit. The men laugh cruelly, calling their scheme a risky move and mocking Yuna for being a pathetic loser. One man dismisses her as a slut who needs a push, while another suggests staying inside won't hurt her. As the bell rings for a customer, the woman smokes with a detached expression, her eyes reflecting a cold numbness. A man grins at her, claiming she looks sexier than ever and that he arrived early because he missed her. A bystander sneers, "Ugh, you smell like sweat? What were you doing?" as he mocks Yuna with a condescending tone. The man smirks and gloats, "You know, I've been training to make you happy," while laughing at Yuna like a child. Yuna glances up with a puzzled as she notices a silent, shadowed boy standing behind the man. A close-up captures her questioning eyes as she stares at the newcomer and breathlessly asks, "And him?" The man enters with a predatory grin and tells Yuna she looks sexier today, claiming he arrived early because he missed her. The man mockingly laughs at her disheveled state and smugly claims he is training hard just to satisfy her. Yuna looks past him at the mysterious, shadowed boy and softly asks who he is. The man dismisses the boy as just a friend while sneering at his innocence, leaving Yuna confused and trapped. The man smirks and boasts that he brought the boy here to make him a man, laughing at the boy's awkward appearance. The man asks if his new outfit is better than a school uniform. The man coldly orders the boy to wait with Yuna while he goes to take care of some business. Confused and unsettled by the sudden order, the boy blinks and asks what he means. The boy stands alone in the silent room, feeling the heavy pressure of the situation he has been forced into. With deep hesitation, the boy sits on the bench, his slumped posture revealing his discomfort with the grim circumstances. The boy trembles while staring at his phone, shocked to see the contact name Ugly displayed on the screen. Rattled by the loud booming noises, he wonders what this place is after seeing the Karaoke sign. He stands alone in the dimly lit room, his face reflecting a deep, hollow exhaustion in the oppressive silence. He remains rigid in the shadows, waiting for his next move as rhythmic thuds echo against the walls. Distracted by the music, he passes a room where a man angrily yells about a mistake made by someone named Park. The man rants aggressively while a woman coldly tells him that everyone blames him, leaving the terrified girl beside them silent. In a moment of desperate defiance, the girl reaches out with a trembling hand, whispering that he must do something. She freezes in shock as he firmly grabs her, forcing her to cry out an apology as her safety vanishes. As he grunts for her to stay still and continues his unwanted touching, she struggles against his suffocating pressure. A sharp, resounding slap shatters the heavy silence, leaving the man stunned as the power balance suddenly shifts. A flustered man and a woman sit in the dim karaoke club, watching the unfolding chaos with tense expressions. Tension rises as a man aggressively pulls a woman toward him, while the word boom echoes through the dark room. Visibly shaken, the girl gasps in panic and apologizes, explaining that this is her first time as she reels in shock. The man erupts in rage, screaming an insult before striking the girl across the face with a brutal, resounding smack. Looming over the weeping girl, the man sneers arrogantly, asking if she truly thinks he cares about her desperate pleas. He viciously grabs the girl's hair, forcing her to cry out in pain and apologize while he coldly commands her to be silent. The aggressor drags the girl away, claiming that in 20 years he has never been struck by a brat, calling the incident unforgivable. Amidst the commotion, a man desperately demands the manager's presence while the girl looks up in sudden, stunned realization upon seeing Kyun-yoon. The man drags the girl down the dark hallway by her hair as a young man in a suit stands frozen in shock. Tears stream down the girl's face as she whispers the name Kyun-yoon in utter disbelief, staring at the boy in the shadows. As the man drags the girl away, the boy watches with a haunting gaze, silently wondering who the man is. The man viciously pulls the girl's hair and threatens to hit her again while she desperately begs him to let her go. The man mocks the boy's bravery, stepping toward him while maintaining a tight, painful grip on the girl's hair. Ignoring her whimpers of pain, the man looms over the girl and strikes her again in a display of cruel dominance. The boy coldly catalogs the man's anatomy before stepping forward to confront him with a challenging question. The traumatized girl looks up with tear-filled eyes, stunned that the boy has finally intervened in her nightmare. The boy mentally calculates his movements, focusing on the principle that his entire body must flow like water. He keeps his eyes fixed on his target, preparing to launch a precise and devastating strike. Terrified bystanders watch in frozen silence as the sudden confrontation erupts into violence before them. With lethal precision, the boy punches the man in the face and commands him to keep his focus on his hands. The bruised boy sits silently by the river under the city skyline, his lonely silhouette reflecting the heavy aftermath of the brutal fight. The girl sits beside him in the darkness, staring at his bloodied face while reeling from the shock of the violent encounter. She looks at his weary face and cruelly asks why he attacked the man when he is so weak. She continues to sob, mocking him by asking if he thinks he is a punching bag after his face was ruined by the man's strike. The battered boy stares at her and quietly asks what she was doing at that place. She breaks into a hysterical laugh, snapping at him and asking why her occupation should matter to him. The boy stares back at her with a bruised face and calmly asks her why she was working there. She tearfully explains she has massive debts from her parents, but he bluntly sighs that he did not ask for those details. The girl stares in shocked silence, her face trembling as she softly gasps his name. She lets out an angry huff and sighs, her eyes stinging with raw emotion as she struggles to process his indifference. The boy, his face still bruised from the fight, looks at her calmly and asks, "For this debt, how much do you need?" Stunned by his unexpected question, the girl stares back at him in silence as the weight of his offer hangs in the air. He stares at her with battered eyes, coldly whispering that he did not ask for all the details. Trembling and tearful, the girl struggles to speak, paralyzed by the crushing reality of her desperate situation. Cutting through the tension, he ignores her distress and persistently demands to know exactly how much she needs. Shocked by his sudden offer to settle her impossible debt, she stares back at him in stunned, wide-eyed disbelief. A car speeds across the bridge, leaving the man alone in the dark with his troubled thoughts. He recalls the shocking moment when the inexperienced boy landed a perfect, powerful punch on the other man's face. The man stands frozen on the bridge, confused by how such an unskilled fighter managed to land that clean hit. Inside the gloomy classroom, the crushing weight of the girl's massive debt of 130 million won looms over everything. The boy rests his bruised face against his hand, his eyes hollow and cold as he stares into the distance. He remains detached, internally calculating the scale of his father's immense wealth and the cost of his buildings. He reflects on his father's vast empire, silently wondering how much all the company's salaries amount to in total. Watching the game, he dismissively thinks that 100 million won is nothing to his father. Yet he remains deeply troubled by her situation. Under the city lights, she tears up with a hopeful smile and asks if he really intends to pay off her debt. She playfully touches his arm and remarks that he must have been born with a silver spoon, leaving him in tense silence. With a haunted and cold expression, he tries to manage her expectations by clarifying that he does not mean right away. She dismissively calls him a kid and says she appreciates the thought, while he fumes at being treated like an idiot. He reaches into his pocket with a heavy sense of dread as the silence between them grows increasingly suffocating. He stares down at his phone with a pale, unreadable face while waiting for the inevitable demand from his father. After receiving a deposit notification from his father, he assumes he is expected to be ready and simply replies with an okay. His phone buzzes again with a chilling message from his father asking if he has found the girl, leaving him paralyzed by the pressure. He steals a nervous glance at the girls chatting nearby, desperately trying to hide his growing anxiety from their cheerful presence. He mutters that she would not want to return to such a place, his voice trembling under the weight of his dark secret. An ominous shadow looms over him as his father appears in the doorway, signaling that his internal struggle is turning into a nightmare. His father coldly announces that he handled the situation from yesterday and that his friend has been fired. Standing tall in the classroom, his father dismissively tells him that the girl cannot show her face for a while. He cruelly mocks the girl as an ugly woman, while his son listens in silent, paralyzed agony. The father continues his cold lecture, claiming he only intervened because he did not want his son to feel bad about being saved. Feeling defeated, the boy finally lowers his head and whispers a thank you, accepting the reality of his father's heartless intervention. The father stares down with cold authority, prompting a confused reaction from his son as he maintains control over his broken spirit. Trapped in guilt, the boy looks up to admit he misunderstood his father while struggling to process the cruel reality. The boy whispers a secret into her ear, unaware that his father is already pulling the strings of her fate. The girl laughs and shares a playful high five, a bittersweet moment of connection now being destroyed by his father's hand. The boy stands in the shadows, his bandaged face reflecting a haunting expression as he drifts away from his bleak reality. Nearby classmates gossip about a new girl, completely oblivious to the heavy tension in the air. The boys claim the new girl is as pretty as a star, but he silently thinks to himself that she is not ugly. His thoughts are interrupted by a cold text message from his father asking if he has found the girl. The bruised boy stands looking vacant while his classmates chatter nearby, completely unaware of his internal suffering. The students continue their excited gossip, while the boy remains trapped in his own heavy and silent reality. As the students praise the new girl's beauty, the boy silently insists to himself that she is definitely not ugly. A cold text message flashes on his screen asking if he found the girl, tightening the grip of his father's conspiracy. In the locker room, his classmates gossip about a girl, but the boy modestly deflects their praise by telling them not to exaggerate. He stands aside, nursing his bandaged face, while silently questioning his own thoughts and concluding that she is certainly not ugly. A chilling text message appears on his phone, asking if he found the girl, as his thumb hovers over the device in the dim light. A notification flashes showing 1,500,000 won in his account, and as he types his confirmation, the cold reality of his betrayal begins to sink in. The text asking about the girl appears alongside his payment, causing his thumb to hesitate under the heavy, suffocating weight of his impending betrayal. He stares into the distance, his bandaged face reflecting the inner turmoil of being forced to fulfill his father's cruel and cold demands. Suddenly, a girl appears in the hazy light, pointing directly at him with an unsettling, blank expression that shatters his sense of reality. She offers an eerie wave, her smile widening into a mask of false innocence that threatens to pull him deeper into his father's trap. The bank notification pressures him to tap out his confirmation, the weight of his betrayal suffocating his conscience as he reaches out to the girl. His thumb hovers over the screen in agonizing hesitation before he finally types his response to confirm the dark task demanded by his father. Crushing guilt stalls his fingers, leaving only a fragmented letter on the screen as the pressure to betray the girl drains his soul. Unable to bear the burden of his actions, he types that he could not succeed, desperately trying to undo the betrayal he set in motion. His hollow, haunted eyes reveal the weight of his guilt as he stares into the abyss of his own cowardice, frozen in silent turmoil. His trembling finger hovers over the screen, poised to finalize the cruel betrayal that will irreversibly seal the girl's fate. With a final shattering surge of resolution, he commits to the darkness and presses send, severing his last ties to mercy and innocence. He stares at his phone screen, hesitating as he types the letter S while weighing the question, "Have you found the girl?" Overcome by cowardice, he types the letter I while struggling to admit his failure to the cold, demanding voice on the other end. His face, marked by shadows and bruises, remains expressionless as he finishes typing his desperate, failing confession. I could not do it. With a trembling thumb, he presses the green button to send his message and seal his dark fate. The screen displays the grim exchange, showing the question, "Have you found the girl?" followed by his crushing confession, "I could not do it." Shadows cloak his battered face as he stares blankly into the distance, paralyzed by the weight of his own failure. He sits isolated at his massive desk, lost in silence while he contemplates his next move. The silence is broken as he types a final, desperate question into the darkness, asking his mysterious contact, "What is porn?" The girl gasps in shock, her face flushing with embarrassment as she drops her spoon in disbelief at the teacher's inappropriate classroom remarks. The boy stares blankly ahead, his eyes wide with hollow confusion as he tries to process the bizarre and uncomfortable situation. The teacher taps the board with his pointer, comparing sperm to StarCraft Zerglings, while the students cringe at his inappropriate classroom behavior. Whispering in discomfort, the students wonder if the teacher really just made a crude video game reference during a lesson on human reproduction. Brandishing his pointer at the chalkboard, the teacher sneers, "What are you talking about back there?" shattering the room's tense silence with his aggressive demand. The teacher singles out the boy, snapping, "Hey, you stand up!" forcing him into the cold and judgmental spotlight of the entire class. As the boy nervously stammers, the teacher mocks him by asking for details about his private life with the girl. With a cruel grin, the teacher asks if he used protection, while his classmates erupt into laughter, turning the boy's intimacy into a disgusting joke. The teacher mocks the boy's awkward silence with a sneering remark, inciting further taunting laughter from the other students in the room. The teacher strikes the boy with his pointer, causing him to cry out in pain as the physical violence matches the verbal assault on his dignity. With a cold, accusatory glare, the teacher points at the boy and warns that his immature behavior risks ruining a girl's life. The teacher continues his harsh tirade, while the boy defensively mutters that he has done nothing wrong. The boy reels in pain from the teacher's strike, gasping AGH as the callous flick cements his public humiliation. The classroom erupts in laughter as a student mocks the boy, leaving him paralyzed by their collective cruelty. Confused and panicking, the boy stares blankly while wondering what the teacher is talking about. He spirals into confusion, obsessing over the mechanics of reproduction and questioning how his actions could ruin a girl's life. A dark, ominous panel looms over the scene, displaying the boy's desperate and naive question, "What is porn?" The girl stares back with wide, trembling eyes, her face flushing with shock and intense anxiety at his blunt question. The boy looks at her with a dazed, hollow expression, his silence reflecting the profound confusion tearing him apart inside. They sit together in a desolate playground, trapped in an awkward, heavy silence as the cold wind blows around them, blushing deeply with embarrassment. The girl stammers, "Let me understand," while trying to process his unexpected and invasive inquiry. The boy stares at her with a blank expression and defends his question, saying she is the only person he can ask. She shouts in shock and pinches his cheeks in indignation after he asks her what pornography is. He stands dazed and confused, calling out to her as she storms away in frustration. Blushing deeply, she sternly warns him that his words constitute sexual harassment. She takes a shaky breath, struggling to find a way to explain the adult concept to the oblivious boy. She tries to simplify the topic by calling it a genre of film, which brings a sudden look of realization to his face. The boy naively asks why the teacher discussed films in sex education class, leaving her stunned into silence. The girl scowls in deep embarrassment and asks if he is being serious, while he stares back in stony silence. Flustered and blushing, she awkwardly struggles to explain what happens when a man and a woman are intimate. She explains that people film those acts with phones or cameras as the boy listens with a blank expression. She mentions the videos ending up on the internet, and when he raises his hand, she agrees to hear his next question. The boy asks with a confused blank expression what she means by that thing, further deepening the heavy silence between them. The girl shouts in a blushing, frustrated rage, asking the boy if he is doing this on purpose. The girl smacks the boy for his ignorance, sharply asking if he slept through his middle school sex education classes. Blushing, the boy admits he barely attended those classes because the theoretical content was too confusing for him to understand. The girl asks if he has no internet, but he remains silent, highlighting his deep sense of social isolation. Confused and lost, the boy innocently asks how he could watch such things on the internet. The girl blushes as she realizes the extent of his social exclusion and asks if his friends ever talk about these things. The boy remains silent, silently reflecting on the cruel classmates who exploit him for chores. The girl pauses with a thoughtful expression and asks if perhaps his parents have spoken to him. His eyes widen in sudden sharp shock as her question about his family triggers an intense internal panic. Shadows cloak his strained features as the girl asks, "Your parents haven't told you?" in the heavy silence. Nervous sweat beads on his brow as he struggles to process the weight of her question. A man ruthlessly drags a struggling girl toward an open door in the dark. The door slams shut, plunging the room into a suffocating, absolute darkness. The boy stands trembling in the shadows, his face pale and eyes hollow as he stares into the void. Terror consumes him as he groans in agony, his teeth chattering uncontrollably from the shock, paralyzed by fear. The boy leans against a wall while his teeth chatter and he lets out ragged, agonized cries. He doubles over in physical pain, gasping and clutching his chest as if he cannot breathe. The girl watches in alarm as the boy violently lurches forward, letting out frantic, sharp cries of pain. He remains hunched over and gasping for breath while the girl stands frozen nearby in the suffocating tension. The girl watches in wide-eyed alarm as the boy collapses, desperately questioning what could be wrong with him. The monitor glows with a search interface, taunting Jin with suggestive options as he prepares to cross a line he cannot easily uncross. With a deliberate click, he initiates the search for prohibited content, his finger trembling as the digital barrier to his dark curiosity begins to crumble. The search results are blocked by strict parental filters, forcing Jin to exhale in relief as his desperate attempt to access the forbidden fails. Deflated and defeated, he slumps back in his chair with a heavy sigh, muttering about his next move while staring at the silent monitor. An unseen voice asks a haunting question that floats across the screen. According to you, what is the most important thing in a fight? Jin stares back with a blank, cold expression, remaining silent as he processes the question in the haunting void. He stands among the men near a fallen body while the voice repeats, "Hey Jin, what is the most important thing in a fight?" A man mocks him by asking, "Hey pretty boy, what is most important in a fight?" And Jin stammers, The mentor commands him with a cold edge, "Strike it for me," forcing him to face the brutal reality of their harsh training. A violent whack echoes through the air as the man strikes, leaving Jin reeling in pain and shock, unable to utter a single word. The mentor looms over Jin, demanding with a sharp stare, "Jin, what is the most important thing in a fight?" while the boy remains trapped in silence. Jin stands frozen in a daze, eventually finding his voice to whisper, "Brutality?" as he grapples with the dark lesson being forced upon him. The mentor stares coldly at the silent boy, his unreadable expression looming over the small group as they wait in the heavy, tense air. With a calm, intimidating gaze, the mentor dismisses the boy's answer, asserting firmly, "Well, I expected something else, but we are close. You need guts," Jin murmurs. "Ah, guts. while the mentor explains that in a school fight, having guts is the only thing that matters. The mentor calls Pan forward and commands them both to stand face to face to test their resolve. The mentor watches Jin with a cold, piercing gaze, the sharp crack of tension filling the air as his lesson on combat begins. Jin stands frozen in absolute silence, his hollow eyes reflecting the crushing weight of his mentor's intimidating words. The man sneers at Jin, claiming, "It seems clear Pan is stronger, but without the guts to fight, that body is useless." He tells Jin, "If you decide to fight, you must gouge eyes, kick balls, bite, or throw sand, whatever it takes to win." Manny uses Pan as a brutal example, grabbing his head to assert dominance while declaring, for example, "Pan." Manny looms over the terrified student, threatening to break his head against the wall while coldly adding, "If you die, I don't give a damn." Jin stands completely paralyzed, his eyes wide with dread as he absorbs the mentor's violent threat. Manny sneers that while Pan was only joking, Jin must develop that same ruthless grit to survive a real fight. With a shattered expression, Jin submits to his mentor's cold authority by simply whispering, "Certainly." Manny offers a sinister smirk, telling Jin, "Excellent. That is enough for today. You can go, Jin. See you at the gym." As Jin walks away, the other men watch his retreating back in an eerie, uncomfortable silence. One man questions Manny with growing unease, asking, "Hey, Manny, why are you doing this, helping that brat?" Manny brushes off the question with a cruel grin, dismissively stating, "There's no real reason, but it's just entertaining to do." The man stares back with an unsettled look and mutters, "If you say so," as the tension thickens between them. The scene shifts to a quiet street where the young girl walks alone, seemingly troubled by recent events. She stares into the distance and asks herself if he is okay, recalling the unsettling truth about his work at the karaoke bar. The girl wonders if his job is just like what she has seen on TV, involving serving drinks and laughing at jokes. She bursts into laughter at his supposed ignorance, calling him an idiot while he groans in frustration. Her laughter fades as she stares intensely, her expression shifting into a sudden quiet realization. A dark thought crosses her mind as she wonders if he might be suffering from some kind of trauma. She stands silently on the street, staring at the path as if trying to process their strange encounter. Her face softens into a smirk as she dismisses the thought, clearly amused by the absurdity of the situation. She sighs while walking, wishing for some ice cream before noticing a flyer posted on a store window. The girl reads the job advertisement for a night shift position with deep curiosity. The store bell rings, shattering the silence of the quiet afternoon. The clerk offers a detached greeting as the girl enters the shop. A low vibration pulses as a car pulls up, casting a long, ominous shadow across the glass. The door creaks open, and a mysterious figure steps inside, shifting the atmosphere. A man stands beside his car with a calculated smile, ready to enter the store. He walks toward the entrance with a steady, deliberate stride, signaling predatory intent. The bell chimes again as the man enters, greeted by the clerk's hollow welcome. The scene fades into suffocating darkness as the confrontation begins behind closed doors. A tall, imposing man steps into the shop, his calm but deadly presence instantly suffocating the nervous clerk at the counter. The atmosphere thickens with dread as the man walks past the shelves, his cold eyes locked onto the clerk, who trembles under his approach. The girl in uniform enters, catching the clerk off guard as the man's shadow looms over the aisle. The tense standoff reaches a breaking point as the man pauses, leaving the helpless clerk trapped by his calculated presence. The man approaches the counter, his predatory silence forcing the terrified clerk to freeze as the air turns deathly cold. Stalking past the aisles like a hunter, the man fixes a chilling gaze upon the clerk, who is visibly shaken by his intrusion. A student in uniform enters, unknowingly walking into the man's dark shadow as he prepares to trap her and the clerk. The man halts his advance, his presence completely overwhelming the pair as the tension in the shop reaches a lethal breaking point. The student timidly asks if the store only hires people over 20, and the man barely acknowledges her with a cold, The man dismisses her inquiry as true to the sign before sharply demanding to know if she is looking for a job. Despite her plea, the man remains hesitant, noting that a night shift seems too difficult for a student. She insists the store will be in good hands, prompting the man to cast a calculated, lingering glance at her. He suddenly relents, coldly telling her she can start tomorrow, leaving her stunned and breathless. Her face lights up with relief as she beams, shouting her thanks into the suffocating quiet. The store's sterile atmosphere swallows them both as she stands frozen, their uneasy pact hanging in the air. The glass door swings open to reveal a new customer, shattering the tension as the man's shadow looms over the counter. The store bell rings with a sharp ding, drawing the man's cold gaze toward the doorway. The girl pauses in confusion, whispering a timid and awkward greeting to the unexpected visitor. The man tracks the newcomer with a stony expression, realizing that the new student has finally arrived. He stares into the distance, realizing this is the same girl who saved Jin earlier that day. The man looms over the girl, coldly remarking that her face shows she dislikes him, yet he feels obligated to greet her anyway. The girl recoils with a guarded expression, sarcastically noting she did not expect a bully like him to be capable of keeping a secret. A smirk curls onto the man's face as he mockingly dismisses her insult, while a flashback reveals him brutally beating a man. Horrified by the violence, the girl accuses him of nearly killing the man, but he dismissively wonders if the victim would have been spared otherwise. The manager turns his head with a cold expression, his sharp gaze cutting through the quiet store as he addresses the situation. He looms over the uneasy girl, dismissively muttering whatever and it was nice as he toys with her nervous energy. He commands her to be more natural next time, while she sarcastically retorts, "Well, have a good day, Mr. Manager." As the bell rings, a sinister smirk spreads across his face while he thinks she is cute, leaving the girl feeling trapped. The manager shifts his gaze, his eyes narrowing with cold intensity as he fixates on something hidden from view. A sudden stillness fills the store as his focus shifts to a lone smartphone left abandoned on the cold counter. The manager reaches out and grips the abandoned phone with predatory precision. He examines the photo of an elderly man on the screen and coldly demands to know whose it is. The young clerk asks for a pack of Marlboro Reds with a casual, mocking tone. The manager stares back with icy eyes, telling the clerk to remove his uniform before entering the store. With a patronizing smile, the manager sarcastically asks if the boy really needs to smoke at his age. The manager keeps his suffocating gaze on the trembling boy, leaving him frozen under the intense pressure. The manager chillingly warns the clerk that selling cigarettes to a student could lead to the shop's closure. He leans in with a calculated smile, taunting the clerk about the potential ruin of the business. The clerk stares back in shock, sweating as he realizes he has lost all control of the situation. Suddenly, the clerk regains his composure and snaps at the manager, calling him an old man to challenge his authority. The man stares down the clerk with icy hostility and aggressively snaps, "Who the fuck asked for your opinion?" The clerk watches anxiously from behind the shelves as the manager looms over him like a dark shadow. The manager leans in with a mocking glare and condescendingly dismisses the clerk as an old man. The clerk freezes in total shock, his mouth agape as he struggles to process the stinging insult. The manager towers over the clerk with hostility, snapping, "Who the fuck asked for your opinion?" The manager stares down at the clerk with a cold, intense gaze that fills the room with intimidation. The clerk remains frozen in silence, his eyes wide and trembling as he faces the overwhelming threat. The manager moves closer to mockingly apologize before coldly demanding the cigarettes again. With a sudden, violent motion, the manager grabs the clerk by the collar, trapping him in a suffocating grip. The manager curls his mouth into a cruel smirk, his predatory nature visible as he prepares his final insult. The manager looks down at the terrified clerk with a cold sneer and hisses, "Watch yourself, old man." The clerk stands in shell-shocked disbelief, struggling to process the nightmare he has just endured. The store bell chimes with a clinical sound, signaling the end of the interaction as the manager walks away in silence. The man narrows his eyes and mutters that the person he just saw looks familiar. The weary clerk sighs and complains to his customer about a student who rudely demanded cigarettes. The customer offers a polite smile and suggests the student will eventually mature, prompting the clerk to ask if he needs to buy anything. The man taps his can on the counter, dismisses the clerk with a cold word, and leaves as the shop bell chimes. The man reaches his sleek car and unlocks the door, signaling an abrupt end to their brief encounter. The car engine hums to life in the empty street, its sudden vibration echoing through the shadows while the woman stands frozen nearby. A young woman sprints frantically toward the shop, her footsteps echoing in the silence as she hopes to catch the man. She arrives breathless and asks if he found her phone, but the man coldly dismisses her plea. The man sits in his silent, sterile office, staring blankly at his phone while the weight of his secret life bears down on him. He sighs and presses the screen to open his music app, hoping to mask his reality with a digital distraction. With a calculated tap, he opens a message from Fisakiato asking about his new school and whether the boys are cute. He coldly replies that he has not even had time to worry about it, showing no remorse for his recent life-altering actions. He dismissively describes a boy as a spineless loner, revealing his judgmental nature while hiding his dark secrets behind the screen. Fasacchiato warns him to stay away to avoid contagion, prompting him to call the boy an idiot and express his deep disdain. Fasacchiato asks where he moved, but he keeps his location secret, citing his father's debt before his contact offers to bring gifts. He stares in shock at the profile picture of R.R. Hood, stunned as the true identity of his mysterious contact is finally revealed. A thick finger slides across the smartphone screen, scrolling through abusive messages from a predator demanding money and threatening the user's grandfather. The screen displays vile threats from the bully who calls the girl a whore and commands her to sell her body. The harasser continues his aggressive barrage, threatening to feed the girl to others if she does not respond to his vile demands. The man views the screen with cold disdain, muttering about poor manners before he swipes away the offensive messages. A finger callously scrolls across the smartphone, revealing a relentless trail of abusive demands from a digital predator. The phone displays peaceful images of a tree, a cat, and food, creating a sharp contrast to the vile threats lurking within the chat. The man sits in his dark office, staring at the phone with a hollow silence that hides his inner turmoil. He is visibly shocked when he sees a smiling photo of the girl and her grandfather, whispering a confused "hun" to himself. As he studies the photo of the girl and her grandfather, his expression hardens into a chilling, silent stare. A cynical smirk twists his face, and a dark chuckle escapes his lips as he remains hidden in the shadows. The screen shows a profile for a girl named RRH, accompanied by abusive messages labeling her a disgusting parasite who must be found. He finally snaps, erupting into a manic, booming laugh that echoes through the empty office. The boss throws his head back, erupting into manic laughter as his face twists into a terrifying mask of madness. The employees sit in the office, whispering in confusion as they try to understand why their boss is laughing so manically. Speculation ends abruptly when the boss slams the door open, appearing in the doorway with a chilling, predatory grin. The office falls into a suffocating silence as the employees stare in terror at their clearly unhinged boss. With a calm, unsettling smile, the man dismisses his staff for the day while concealing his dark intentions. The harasser erupts in rage when his victim calls him an idiot, threatening to finish her off. Tension spikes when the target replies with a cold, dismissive further fueling the predator's aggressive frustration. The man snaps in disbelief at her lack of fear, snarling, "Are you stupid?" as his patience dissolves. A message aggressively pops up on the screen demanding, "So you don't want them?" The money. The recipient, labeled disgusting parasite, furiously types back, "What the hell are you talking about?" The conversation escalates as the sender insists on payment, while the chat window displays an innocent profile picture of a girl in a red hood. The man texts asswipe to the parasite, who replies with a violent threat, "Don't make me finish you, you slut." The man sends HMPH, prompting the frustrated parasite to lash out and ask, "Are you stupid, HMPH?" The man taps his screen to demand if the parasite wants the money, leaving him completely bewildered by the sudden shift in tone. Confused and angry, the parasite curses, while the man coldly finishes the interaction by texting, "I'm paying you today." In the urban shadows, a young girl rushes past a cold-faced man in a car who tracks her with predatory intensity. The girl pauses with a panicked expression as the title "Bastard" appears, her eyes reflecting the dread of being hunted. Walking through the night, the man looms over the boy and chillingly remarks that he feels more strength in the boy's punches. The man smiles cruelly and tells the boy he is doing fine, but then snaps, "What is it?" when the boy stares back in confusion. The boy offers an unsettling smile and tells the man he is a better person than expected, while a drop of sweat betrays his tension. Heavy silence hangs between them as the boy remains frozen, mumbling that he is just surprised while the man radiates cold dominance. The man sneers with a wicked grin, mocking the boy for his weakness. The man looms closer with a predatory gaze, demanding to know what the boy is saying. The man points out the new student to the boy with a mocking, cruel tone. The boy freezes in shock when the girl suddenly calls out his name. The man interrupts their silence with a chilling laugh, leaving the boy completely confused. The boy gently asks the girl if she is crying as she struggles to compose herself. Distressed, the boy confesses to the girl that he has lost his phone. The girl tearfully explains that she has lost her phone along with all her precious photos and contacts. The boy offers to call her number, suggesting that someone might have taken the phone. The girl realizes the logic in his plan while the boy silently thinks she is an idiot. The boy holds the phone to his ear with a blank expression, waiting for a connection in the heavy silence. A tense stillness hangs over the trio as the buzzing phone call becomes the only link in the quiet night. The boy whispers hello into the phone, waiting for a response that might reveal the truth behind his desperate situation. Shock and horror widen his eyes as he freezes, stunned by the terrifying answer he hears on the other end. The boy stands frozen in the dark, his slender frame looking fragile while his face is etched with hollow shock. An older man sitting in a dark car speaks calmly into his phone, asking if the boy is the owner of the device. The boy's expression shifts into haunting terror as he recognizes the voice, whispering in sudden chilling realization. The call abruptly ends with a harsh beep, leaving the boy standing in the dark, speechless and visibly shaken. The trio lingers in awkward silence as they discuss the lack of an answer, deepening the mystery of the situation. The boy stares down at his dark screen in a state of shaky panic, admitting that the phone was turned off. The scene shifts to a cold hallway where a sign for Vang Cheol-jeon loans signals Kyun has entered dangerous territory. The little thief texts a meeting request to Station X, prompting a suspicious thug to wonder how Kyun found the money. A stocky man emerges from the shadows to question if the boss is going out as the thugs track their target's movements. The thug scoffs that Kyun Yoon claims she would pay, leading the other to sarcastically ask if she won the lottery. The leader rants about the massive debt and mocks the idea of Kyun bringing a brat and some punks to help her. The boss roars that he fears no one and orders Manduk to accompany him as they prepare to settle the matter. Two men stand on a cold stone staircase overlooking a desolate square where homeless people huddle for warmth in the freezing night. The boss complains about the coming winter and abruptly demands that Manduk bring him a coffee. Manduk obediently agrees to the request, but his phone suddenly pings with an urgent notification that interrupts their routine. The boss checks the message about the canceled meeting and snaps at Manduk to forget about the coffee for now. Biting his cigarette in irritation, the boss stares at his phone and grumbles about how annoying the situation has become. After receiving the thief's request to visit her home, the boss coldly threatens to bury her in a coffin if she fails to provide the money. The boss decides they will travel by car, and Manduk submissively offers to drive as they head out into the night. They arrive at the apartment and pound on the door, shouting for Kyun Yoon to open up, but only silence answers them. Kicking the door, the boss snarls that the grandfather must be inside and demands to know if the old man can hear him. The boss pauses, his expression shifting into a cold, predatory smirk as he spots the old man watching from the shadows. Silence hangs in the air as the boss stares into the darkness, his eyes narrowing as he realizes his prey is cornered. The man curls his lips into a sinister grin and whispers, "I found you," as he looms over the terrified victim. He stares into the silent room, feeling the heavy burden of searching for those who have disappeared. Frustration boils over as he shouts into the empty space, demanding to know if the old man can hear his taunts. He bellows "old man" with cruel intent, his voice cutting through the stillness as he hunts for his target. A dark predatory smirk spreads across his face as he locks eyes with his prey, heightening the tension in the room. The man's expression distorts into a chilling predatory smirk as he finally makes eye contact with the target he has hunted for so long. The predator leans in close and whispers, "I found you," sealing their fate in a moment of suffocating dread. A tense standoff begins in the dim light as the boy stands paralyzed between the aggressive thug and the fearful girl. The boy stares blankly while processing the danger, then exhales and decides it is better to calm down to survive. The boy, the girl, and the tall thug pause in the dim street as she looks at him in shock and lets out a nervous sigh. The boy looks intensely at the girl with a sweat-covered face, begging her to listen to him for just a moment. He swallows hard, his throat tight with fear, wondering if the intimidating man could be the girl's father. The girl watches in confusion as the man offers help, while the boy stares back with a desperate look, realizing they must find her phone. Tears well in the girl's eyes as she stares into the darkness, whispering a fragile and trembling, "Come to the figures before her." As they stand on the bridge, the girl interrupts the man to ask with a cracking voice, "And the security cameras?" A heavy silence fills the air as she stares blankly at the man, nervously offering a soft, while waiting for an answer. The boy's face darkens with desperation as he urgently asks them if they have checked the camera recordings. Standing in the shadows, the girl stares with terror and confusion, whispering a fragile, trembling, "Come to the men?" The man looms over her with a cold, demanding gaze as she nervously asks, "And the security cameras?" The man offers a dismissive, crooked smile, leaving her in a suffocating silence where she can only respond with a blank, The boy's face contorts into a mask of frantic desperation as he snaps, demanding to know if they checked the camera recordings. As the man rants about a bothersome old man scolding him for buying cigarettes, the boy listens with a stunned expression, signaling a shift in their investigation. The girl asks if he knows the man, and he replies that the stranger bothered him before questioning how the guy dares to steal as well. Jin declares they must find the man, while the girl sarcastically mutters a comment about his performance, highlighting the growing tension of their mission. The boy stands with a hollow look of pure agony on his face as the others watch him in a heavy, suffocating silence. A close-up reveals his eyes wide with soul-crushing terror as he lets out a desperate, guttural gasp that echoes his internal collapse. She asks if his phone had a password, and his hollow reply shows his complete mental disintegration. She questions if there are photos of her on his phone, but his panicked eyes remain fixed in a trance of absolute fear. He reaches out to grab her with an unhinged gaze, coldly murmuring that the answer seems obvious to him. A man looms over the boy, shrieking that he is an idiot, causing the boy to flinch in confusion and sudden alarm. The man growls that the boy does not know what he has done, while the shocked girl asks what the problem is. Overwhelmed by his mistake, the boy drops his bag and clutches his head, whispering "no, sorry" in complete despair. An eerie silence hangs over the shop as the others stand motionless, trapped in the chilling aftermath of the boy's sudden confession. The girl stares in confusion, her eyes wide as the boy looms over her with an intense and unsettling look. Frustrated and desperate, the boy snaps "Kazo" while frantically reaching for his wallet, his posture tense with the weight of the situation. The boy aggressively forces cash into her hands, commanding her to stay put and handle the phone while he insists she avoids going home. He screams at her to use the money for a hotel, warning her with terrifying intensity never to call that number again as he storms away. The girl stands paralyzed in shock, her eyes reflecting deep confusion as the silence between her and the two men stretches thin. The man questions the boy's cryptic orders, while the girl remains shaken, struggling to comprehend why she must avoid her own home and grandfather. A flicker of realization sparks in the man's eyes, prompting the girl to cautiously ask if he recognizes the mysterious man they discussed. The man reveals he recognizes the stranger from an article about influential leaders and trusts that Jin will find the phone without further interaction. The man points to a news article identifying Dongsu Seon, the CEO of G Corporation and a bitter rival of her father. She gasps in disbelief, her eyes wide as she realizes this dangerous man is Jin Seon's father. Frantic footsteps echo on the pavement as he sprints through the darkness, desperate to escape the tightening web of the conspiracy. A memory of her smiling face flashes through his mind, contrasting sharply with his own ragged, suffocating breaths. Haunted by her smile, he sprints through the night hoping his father is too forgetful to have memorized his phone number. He freezes in his tracks as his phone chimes, the sudden sound shattering his momentum and forcing him to face his fear. A surge of panic consumes him as he curses loudly, the weight of the encroaching danger crushing his hope for a quick escape. Standing in the shadows, they seethe with malice, coldly dismissing her as someone trying to play games with them. A tense silence hangs in the air as a door slowly creaks open, revealing a frail, disoriented elderly man. The disheveled old man gazes blankly ahead, his vacant eyes revealing a mind lost in the fog of confusion. The disoriented old man pulls at his clothes, crying out for his mother and begging for food while the visitor watches him calmly. The man mocks the elder by calling him Little Red Riding Hood's grandfather, but the old man simply ignores him to ask for a meal. The man dismisses the hunter from the fairy tale, while the impatient elder cries out that he needs to pee and wants food. The predator looms over the vulnerable old man, wearing a sinister smile as he mocks the elder's demand for food. The man asserts his dominance by grabbing the elder's shoulder and chillingly threatening to eat his granddaughter. A close-up captures the absolute terror on the listener's face as the horrific reality of the threat finally sinks in. A text message from his father appears on the screen, revealing that he has found where the girl lives and plunging the son into dread. Trembling under the city lights, the boy stares at his phone and whispers a desperate no in response to the terrifying news. The son envisions his father's cold, smug face and cries out in fear, realizing that the monster is now targeting the girl. Overcome by panic, the boy screams "not her" into the phone in a desperate attempt to stop his father's looming nightmare. Jin's face contorts in terror as the weight of his father's dark threat begins to take hold. A notification from his father stating, "I found where that girl lives," shatters the fragile peace Jin tried to maintain. Paralyzed under the streetlights, Jin clutches his phone as a wave of dread forces a broken no from his trembling lips. The image of his father's smug smile flashes in his mind, fueling Jin's desperate, heart-wrenching plea of "no, not her." Jin stares upward with fearful eyes, his trembling hand raised as if to ward off the shadow of his father's pursuit. Panic consumes Jin as he screams "No lay" into his phone, his face twisted in agony at the realization of his father's intent. The screen displays his father's smug, satisfied grin, confirming that the predator has successfully cornered his helpless prey. The father sits in the darkness, heartlessly ignoring the elderly man's desperate cry for food while he gloats over his victory. Jin grips his head in total despair, frantically wondering what to do as his heart pounds with uncontrollable dread. His eyes widen in shock as his rhythmic footsteps cease, signaling that he has finally reached the girl's location. A chilling message from his father asks if he has arrived, leaving Jin frozen and paralyzed by the weight of the threat. Jin stares blankly at his phone as his father coldly confirms he is being watched, trapping him in a web of control. Jin stands frozen in the shadows, his eyes wide with hollow terror as he desperately wonders what to do next. Paralyzed by the crushing weight of his predicament, he trembles and bites his lip, whispering to himself in despair. Consumed by panic and trapped in his father's cruel game, he lets out a frantic internal scream demanding to know how to stop it. The suffocating tension is interrupted when a twisted, elderly voice drifts through the darkness, mockingly calling out to Mommy. The man looms over him, coldly commanding him to go to bed so he can work the next day. Jin sits in the heavy silence, his expression crumbling as he stares at his phone and realizes his father is late. The sudden ping of a notification shatters the quiet, snapping Jin's attention to his phone with a flash of raw panic. A message from his father chillingly announces that the police are at his home, forcing Jin to jump into desperate action. Jin sits paralyzed in the silent room, his face illuminated by the cold, haunting glow of his phone screen. Driven by a frantic need to escape the suffocating tension, Jin violently rattles the door open to flee his home. A small figure huddles under blankets in the lonely apartment, breathlessly whispering, "Mama?" into the dark. Towering skyscrapers loom outside against the night sky as a sharp, insistent notification beep shatters the silence. Jin stares ahead with hollow eyes as the crushing darkness of his apartment isolates him in a private nightmare. Jin's abandoned shoes lie on the floor as silent witnesses to his sudden and frantic departure. The father stands in the doorway with a knife in hand, his voice slicing through the heavy air as he calls out to his son. Jin huddles in the shadows, paralyzed by fear as his father looms over him and coldly asks why the lights are off. Hunched in the darkness with haunted eyes, Jin breaks the silence by whispering to his father that the police were there. The father's face hardens with suspicion as he leans into the shadows and sharply demands to know what the police said. Jin nervously explains that the police asked why their specific floor is the only one in the entire building without security cameras. After mentioning their questions about the private elevator, Jin whispers that the police finally left, concluding his account. Jin stares blankly at his father, his voice barely audible as he asks why the police came to their home. His father explains that the police were investigating a fight on their floor and were looking for witnesses to compensate for the missing camera footage. The father corners Jin, demanding to know who was fighting on their private floor, but a terrified Jin can only whisper that he does not know. The father taps a phone on the table, the sharp sound echoing through the room like a ticking time bomb. Jin sits in the shadows, his eyes wide with confusion and mounting dread as he stares at his father. The father looms over his son, adjusting his tie with a cold, calculated smirk before breaking the silence. With a predatory grin, the father leans closer to the trembling boy and demands to know why he withheld information. Jin looks up in panic, whispering, "Eh?" As his father coldly reveals he knows that Jin found the girl. Jin stares from the shadows, his voice trembling as he admits he never had the chance to tell his father about the girl. He explains that he found her today, but she claimed to have lost her phone as soon as they began talking. Clinging to hope, he reveals he tried calling her number and was stunned to hear his father's voice on the other end. His father looms over him, coldly demanding an explanation, to which a terrified Jin replies that he hung up. The father looms over his son with a chilling, predatory smirk as he coldly demands to know what happened next. Jin cowers in the darkness, admitting that he read the father's message and decided no further action was necessary. The father stands tall and imposing, silently contemplating the situation before coldly declaring that he now only needs to speak with her. Jin's face contorts into a jagged, sinister grin as he hisses that they should make her come to them. The father watches his son with a predatory, haunting smile that drips with malice, clearly relishing the chilling tension in the room. Jin collapses against the bedroom door, his body trembling as he finally releases a desperate, shaky breath after the terrifying confrontation. Jin gasps in disbelief, muttering that he did not expect his father to remember the number and that it was a close call. Clutching his chest, Jin laughs nervously and whispers his relief that his father did not find the girl today. Jin stares into the void with wide, trembling eyes, questioning why he feels so relieved despite the circumstances. In the dim, quiet room, the grandfather lies motionless in his bed, lost in a deep and peaceful sleep. The floorboards creak as the grandfather wakes up startled just as his granddaughter enters the room to ask if he was sleeping. The girl hugs him, excitedly announcing her mother's return and telling her grandfather to go back to sleep after his dream. The grandfather chuckles about his dream as the girl responds with a sweet, eerie agreement that breaks the silence. The girl sits alone in the dark room, clutching the cash in her hand with a strange and quiet intensity. She stares down at the banknote in her palm with a deepening, unsettling smile, whispering a thank you to the dummy. She pauses to correct herself, softly whispering the name Jin Seon while she sits in the shadows. A cold, gray school building stands under a gloomy sky overlooking a desolate, trash-filled alleyway. A hand appears, offering a phone with a quiet murmur of, "Here it is!" The girl gasps in relief at seeing her phone, while the boy coldly states that this settles his debt. The boy freezes in wordless shock when the girl mentions that his father was the one who took it. The girl rummages through her belongings in the silence of the alley while the boy stands stiffly. She hands him some items and pointedly asks why he avoids his own father so intensely. The girl smiles and admits she appreciated the gesture, but coldly tells the boy to keep the items. He mumbles that it's nothing, but she authoritatively counts down from 3 for him to take the object. The girl playfully tosses an object toward the boy, who looks unsettled by her casual demeanor. A close-up reveals the girl's deceptively sweet expression as she manipulates the power balance between them. The boy narrows his eyes with deep suspicion, asking who told her about his father. The girl laughs off his tension and whacks his back, thanking him for helping with her debt. The boy turns away with a face full of doubt, muttering that it was nothing before leaving. The girl watches him retreat with a look of irritation, sighing as he leaves so abruptly. The man looks on in total disbelief, his eyes wide as he stammers, "A first crush?" They jog breathlessly along the path until the boy gasps and asks if the man ever had a crush. The man shouts in frustration, mocking the boy for acting like he is in a pathetic teen drama. As they continue to jog, the exhausted boy mumbles a vague response to the man's intense questioning. The boy stumbles, admitting that while he feels stronger, his heart feels as if it might explode. The man suddenly asks if he likes Kyun Yoon, causing the boy to crash to the ground in shock. The boy's heart hammers against his ribs as he wheezes, it seems like it, struggling to maintain his composure. As they jog, the man mocks him by asking if he is kidding, while the breathless boy stammers for him to wait. A sudden flash of memory triggers the boy's inner turmoil as he wonders why he would fall for that weirdo. The man corners him with a sneer, claiming the boy has no chance because every guy is chasing the girl. The man looms with a sharp-edged grin and coldly asks, "So, can I have her?" Paralyzed by the question, the boy freezes in shock as the man tells him he is like an open book. The boy winces in mental anguish, imagining the man embracing the girl, and whispers that he doesn't want to imagine it. The man sneers that the boy is too naive and needs to learn about girls since he hasn't made a move. The boy hangs his head in shame, stammering that he actually does know something about girls. Looking away with sweat on his brow, he admits he has no feelings of love or sexual desire. The man stares back with stunned disbelief, wondering if the boy has any basic drive at all. The man dismisses the boy's apathy, comparing his lack of experience to someone who has never tasted chicken. The man leers at the boy, declaring that at their age they are still just innocent children. The boy stares down and murmurs that he has never had a first crush. The man remains unmoved, coldly replying that not having a crush is not a bad thing. With a mocking smirk, the man taunts the boy and suggests making Kyun Yoon his first crush. The two figures walk through the Twilight City as the boy struggles for breath, whispering, "Senti?" The man glances back with an inquisitive while observing the boy's distress. The man asks if the boy really likes Kyun, then dismissively claims he has no soft spot for her. The exhausted boy pauses breathlessly while the man asks if he knows what a guy needs to succeed with girls. The man smirks predatorily, dismissing the boy's emotional struggle as a mere provocation. The boy stands paralyzed and drenched in cold sweat, trapped in a haunting silence. They reach the towering city buildings, and the boy exhales a shaky breath of relief. Collapsing onto the sofa, the boy sighs that the errands are tiring with a dazed expression. He stares silently at the clock, thinking of the man who will be late today. Standing alone in the kitchen, he grabs a can of food as the metal clicks. With a blank expression, he methodically eats his lonely meal in the suffocating silence. He smiles softly, thinking that his father finally succeeded in finding Kyun. He gazes downward with a somber expression, feeling the heavy weight of his isolation. The silence breaks as he whispers his desperate wish to keep her safe. The boy's eyes widen in sharp realization as the truth of his protective feelings dawns on him. A deep blush floods his cheeks as he stands stunned by the intensity of his own emotions. The man looms over him with a sharp gaze, cruelly asking if he likes Kyun-yoon. A single hollow tap of his spoon against the table punctuates the suffocating silence. Staring down at his meal, the boy whispers in disbelief as he finally accepts his hidden feelings. The girl smiles warmly at a photo on her phone showing her with two protective father figures. She looks up from her screen, her eyes shimmering with hope as she watches the boy by the gate. The boy stands still and uneasy, absorbing her silent, expectant gaze in the heavy tension of the moment. A gentle expression crosses her face as she lets out a soft, contented hey-hey, finding a brief sense of peace. With a shy, hopeful blush, the girl taps her phone screen, her eyes sparkling as she fixates on something personal. Her thumb lingers over a contact list, highlighting the connections that define their fragile, unfolding relationship. Alone in his room, he finally yields to his heart, whispering to the silence, "Admit it. Okay, I like Kyun." He quickly retreats from his honesty, stammering, "No, I'm just a little interested in her, maybe just a tiny bit." Jin hunches over his dark desk, muttering, "Ha! What am I doing?" as the silence of his room mocks his turmoil. A sudden sharp ding snaps Jin out of his thoughts, and he glances down, hoping for a sign. Jin stares at his phone in disbelief, his pulse racing with nervous intensity as he reads the unexpected message notification. He reads a bizarre spam message about pills and late-night passion, quickly losing interest as he realizes it is not from Kyun. Jin lunges across his bed in a frantic rush to grab the phone from the mattress. Curled up in the dark, he taps his screen with trembling fingers while waiting for a reply to his message. A sharp notification tone breaks the silence, and Jin freezes as he flushes red upon seeing a message from Kyun-yoon. His heart pounds as he reads her message, thanking him for the phone and admitting her initial cold impression of him was wrong. Lying alone in his dim room, Jin taps his screen with wide, nervous eyes while muttering about the length of her message. He stares intently at her text, reading her thoughts on his personality before he types a curt reply, telling her not to do that again. Jin frantically types an apology for his earlier behavior, only to be stunned by her unexpected promise to be his friend. Stunned by her bold declaration, Jin's eyes widen in shock as he pauses to hesitantly type a reply, asking if she is being serious. She sends a blushing, warm message promising to stand by him even if the entire world turns its back on him. The atmosphere becomes deeply intimate as her follow-up message declares, with absolute certainty, that she will always be on his side. Jin lies paralyzed in the dim light, his wide, trembling eyes betraying the profound shock he feels at her unexpected confession. A dazed smile slowly spreads across his face as he lets out a giddy laugh, completely captivated by the sweetness of her words. Curled up in the silent room, Jin remains lost in deep reflection after reading her life-changing messages. As he hits the snooze button, the outside world fades away, leaving him alone with the intoxicating comfort of her promise. He sits up in the darkness, his face a mask of vulnerability as the weight of his new reality begins to sink in. His hands tremble while clutching his chest, releasing a sharp, pained breath that marks a permanent shift in his guarded heart. A sudden force yanks him into the void, his hand grasping at empty air as a deafening sound tears through the silence. He plummets into the abyss, his body flailing in panic as a mysterious light illuminates the terrifying darkness surrounding him. His wide, terrified eyes snap open as he stares blankly into the crushing darkness of his own mind. The glowing, ethereal figure of Kyun appears before him, forcing him to confront the weight of her promise. Kyun suddenly manifests as a bright apparition, leaving the terrified boy struggling to process her unexpected arrival. He calls out her name in shock as she drifts closer through the suffocating darkness of his mind. She pulls him into a desperate embrace and whispers that things are hard, leaving him frozen in disbelief. Their eyes lock in a heavy, wordless silence as he confronts the painful reality hidden within her presence. The spectral Kyun tenderly cradles his head, her soft smile offering a brief moment of comfort in the oppressive darkness. Kyun pulls him into a gravity-defying embrace, their figures suspended in a vast, lonely void that echoes his internal turmoil. The scene abruptly shifts from the supernatural encounter to cold, towering skyscrapers that ground the story in harsh reality. An intoxicated man stumbles through the doorway, laughing loudly while exclaiming that life is difficult for messy kids. The uncle chuckles mockingly, shouting to the empty room that the kids think they have surpassed their elders now that they are growing up. He slurs a mocking sing-song Jin while looming over the bed like a dark, intrusive shadow, oblivious to the boy's troubled slumber. The man snaps a photo and sneers, "Ah, here's my sleeping nephew," before looking down at the boy and murmuring, "Poor thing." With palpable disdain, the uncle mutters about Jin's dead mother and his father, causing the boy to flinch in his sleep and murmur Kyun. Flushed with intoxication, the uncle chuckles and mutters that Jin must be dreaming as he continues to loom over the bed. The uncle stumbles into the room asking if Jin is asleep, followed by a manic, unsettling laugh that shatters the silence of the night. The uncle grins foolishly and taps the wall, declaring that his nephew has become a man, while the observer watches in total confusion. Jin murmurs that he is going to take a shower, and the uncle simply replies, "Okay," leaving an awkward and tense silence in the room. Heavy footsteps echo through the quiet apartment as a looming figure enters the room, breaking the stillness with the sound of his approach. The drunken uncle stands over the sleeping boy like a predator, suffocating the fragile sanctuary Jin desperately tries to maintain in the darkness. The man dismissively flicks his wrist and turns away, his casual demeanor masking the deep, unsettling intrusion he just committed. He wears a twisted, knowing smirk as he mutters that Jin has become a man, leaving a suffocating silence in the room. The heavy silence breaks as an ominous speech bubble appears in the void, asking with chilling anticipation, "So, are we there yet?" Jin sits alone in the dim room, his posture stiff with tension as he contemplates his father's threatening presence. With a mocking gaze, his father looks down at him and sneers, "He has become a man." Jin rises from the couch in heavy silence and walks toward the dark hallway. He slowly pushes the creaky door open, his eyes narrowing as he peers into the shadows. A dark, ominous painting hangs in isolation on the pristine wall. With trembling hands, Jin pulls the painting away to reveal the hidden space behind it. He stands frozen, his face wearing a mask of hollow resignation as he stares into the dark void. He finally confronts the sinister weapon in the alcove and whispers, "So, this is it?" The silence of the bedroom is broken when Jin jolts awake, his heart pounding in the dark. He sits upright in bed, his eyes wide with confusion as the unsettling stillness leaves him feeling vulnerable. A disturbing, wet sloshing sound fills the air, causing Jin to clutch his blanket in terror. Sweat beads on Jin's forehead as he stares into the shadows, blurting out a confused, desperate, "Huh? Huh?" into the void. A mechanical buzzing vibration fills the room as the washing machine spins, shattering Jin's fragile sense of peace. Jin stands motionless in the doorway, staring at the humming machine while his mind reels from his unsettling dream. Struggling with his thoughts, Jin wonders if these are the dreams he has heard about while a tender memory flashes in his mind. Overcome by sudden mortification, Jin crouches and screams, "How embarrassing," while hiding his flushed face in his hands. Jin screams in frustration while standing alone in his quiet living room, trying to process his intense emotions. In the solitude of his room, Jin sits hunched over his desk, desperately scribbling notes to find a way to protect Kyun Yoon. He stares intensely at the paper, focused on the singular, desperate thought, "I need a plan to protect Kyun Yoon." Jin analyzes his father's behavior, noting that he ignores girls who do not meet his specific, twisted preferences. Jin realizes that all of his father's victims share specific, unsettling characteristics. He taps his pen while noting that they all have hair that is dark. He writes that his father avoids girls with lighter hair, preferring those dressed in simple, cute outfits. Jin scribbles frantically, realizing that his father avoids girls with a serious, intense gaze. He obsessively notes his father's preference for dog people over cat people to establish a survival pattern. He documents that his father prefers girls with round faces and gentle eyes over those who appear mature. Jin taps his pencil against the notebook as he finalizes the traits that could shield Kyun Yoon from his father. Standing in the dim room, Jin stares at his notes, wondering if his small plan is enough to save her. The school bell rings with an ominous toll, signaling that the outside world is closing in on him. Jin stands motionless in the playground, watching his desperate notes burn as he destroys the evidence of his dangerous obsession. Startled, Jin turns with a panicked expression as Kyun-yoon arrives and casually asks what he is doing. Kyun-yoon approaches, eating a snack, and asks why he is alone, unaware of the secret plan he has just burned. Jin freezes in a state of blushing panic, overwhelmed by her sudden presence as his mind struggles to process her arrival. Terrified that his secret is exposed, Jin flails in a sweaty panic as his burnt notes crumble into drifting ashes. Kyun-yoon asks if he has no friends, to which Jin coldly replies that he is so famous, he drives them away. A suffocating silence descends between them as Jin stares at her, burdened by the heavy secret he refuses to share. Kyun-yoon breaks the silence by asking him what he was burning as the smoke curls away. Jin looks away, hesitating as he desperately tries to find the right words to hide his true intentions from her. He finally blurts out that he is trying to fight, leaving her startled and frantically demanding to know who his enemy is. He abruptly ends the conversation and walks away, leaving a confused Kyun-yoon to wonder if he is talking about a video game. Kyun-yoon asks Jin with wide-eyed alarm if he is truly going to confront Manny. Jin turns his back and coldly dismisses her concern with a cryptic response. Kyun-yoon admits she is confused, while Jin insists that he is on her side. Kyun-yoon looks at him with sudden clarity and softly tells him she is with him. Jin gazes forward with cold determination, his shadowed profile hiding the turmoil within as he prepares for the fight. A chilling silence fills the air while Jin stands firm against the rising tension of the moment. Kyun-yoon watches him with concern, and Jin coldly declares that everything is excellent. A malevolent figure emerges from the shadows, tauntingly shouting at Jin to show his strength. Jin walks through the hallway, his posture reflecting the crushing burden of 17 years spent as a killer's accomplice. A close-up reveals his haunted eyes as he confesses that he thought being an accomplice was his only way to survive. The atmosphere grows heavy with dread as the word "however" signals a major shift in his dark journey. Seeing her radiant smile changes his heart, and he makes a life-altering decision. Jin walks through the empty hallway, carrying the heavy shadow of a life spent under his father's control. He stands still, firmly declaring to himself that he has grown enough to break free from the past. His father's unsettling, wide grin flashes in his memory as he struggles to escape the darkness. With a cold gaze, Jin rejects his tormentor, deciding he no longer needs a psychopathic father. Jin's father looms in the frame, his chilling grin a haunting reminder of the darkness he forced upon his son. Jin stands isolated, his expression showing a cold resolve to finally sever his father's cruel influence. The father watches with a predatory smirk, attempting to exert his lingering psychological grip over his escaping son. Jin turns his back on his past and walks away to embrace a life free from his father's control. Jin lies motionless in the vast, empty space, his rigid posture marking his final detachment from his father's suffocating shadow. Towering over his son, the father casts a dark shadow while chillingly declaring, "Often, children who do not listen to their parents and rebel are called." The father's face twists into a sinister grin as he leans in to deliver the crushing final label, "Bastards." Jin stands trapped beneath his father's psychological weight, his head hanging low as he stoically absorbs the cruel judgment that has long defined his life. As the brutal label hangs in the silence, Jin finally looks up with eyes burning in a resolve that shatters his father's control. Rejecting his father's cruelty with calm, Jin declares, "If this is what it means to be a bastard, then I will be very happy." Robert Johnson, 1911 next to 1938, is introduced as a legendary blues guitarist whose mysterious life and early death remain a haunting enigma. An illustration shows Johnson playing guitar, while the text questions his rapid rise to fame and his dark pact before dying at 27. A close-up captures Johnson's hollow, vacant eyes as he realizes the crushing, eternal weight of the soul-selling bargain he made. A grotesque, demonic face looms at a crossroads, offering the listener any desire in exchange for their soul. The ghost of Robert Johnson stares out with hollow eyes, his somber expression reflecting the tragic cost of the fame he traded his soul to achieve. Johnson's gaze remains fixed and haunting, his face a silent mask of regret as the reality of his cursed bargain finally takes hold. A terrifying, monstrous entity emerges from the shadows to ask if he desires money, fame, or pleasure in exchange for his soul. Jin stands alone in the suffocating void, gripping a mop while he stares up at the towering demon and whispers his response. Jin bows his head in silent concentration, his posture burdened by the weight of the dark and difficult decision he must make. A chilling sense of finality hangs in the air as Jin solemnly declares that he only wants to kill the entity. The eerie silence is shattered by the frantic beeping of a logic game, pulling Jin abruptly back to reality. As Guan Anji bursts into the room shouting for his boss, Jin is forced to snap out of his trance to face the intrusion. Jin leans back in his chair with a cigarette in his mouth, coolly asking his frantic employee, "Huh? What is it?" Guan Anji paces nervously, blurting out in disbelief that Kyun-yoon finally paid the full 130 million she owed them. Jin stares with a sharp, piercing gaze, silencing the room as he commands Guan Anji to stay calm and avoid making any trouble. Jin dismissively tells Guan Anji to leave Miss Kim in his hands, officially beginning her strange new shift under his watchful eye. The woman with glasses smiles warmly at the nervous girl, saying, "Of course, don't worry. Have a good evening," as she prepares to exit. The girl watches the man walk away with a troubled expression, silently processing the chilling encounter while left alone in the dim space. A sudden bell rings, startling the girl, until the woman turns back to hiss, "Ugh, thank God that maniac is gone," leaving her completely stunned. When the girl asks for clarification, the woman dismisses her with a flat, "Ah, nothing," as the ominous tension shifts toward her mysterious shift. The shop bell chimes and the girl receives an ominous text from Storpio saying he needs to tell her something after training tomorrow night. The girl stares at the cryptic message in silence, while the bespectacled woman watches her with an intense, probing gaze. The woman asks if the sender is her boyfriend, leaving the girl completely flustered and blushing in total shock. When the woman teases her about liking him, the girl nervously scratches her head and insists he is just a friend. The woman reprimands the girl for checking her phone and warns her to stay sharp while asking if she has seen the latest news. Caught off guard, the girl gives a meek response while the woman smiles and coldly insists it is time for her to work seriously. The girl begins her shift in the quiet store, mindlessly sweeping the floors while the weight of the unsettling news lingers in the air. As she stalks the shelves, the girl's stiff movements betray the growing sense of dread fueled by the shop's suffocating atmosphere. The store feels like a tomb as the girl sweeps in silence, her mind racing with the heavy anxiety of Storpio's upcoming revelation. While she methodically stocks the shelves, the crushing atmosphere of the shop makes the girl feel vulnerable and trapped in the cold, empty aisles. The sharp ding of the shop bell interrupts her anxious thoughts, causing her to turn toward the entrance in immediate alarm. She prepares to offer a polite greeting, but her words fail as she freezes upon seeing who has entered the store. The tall man grins mockingly and sneers at her, calling her the girl who cannot get ahead as he looms over her. Visibly flushed and frustrated, she suspiciously confronts them about being constantly seen together lately. They coldly dismiss her accusation by suggesting they can just pretend at school, leaving her stunned and annoyed as she huffs in resentment. She boldly grabs her friend's hand to pull him away, claiming he has the flu and that she must protect her puppy. The boy stands frozen in shock, his face burning with a deep blush after being called a sick puppy. She quickly jerks her hand away with a slap and demands he let her go, while the tall man watches with disbelief. The man sneers at their awkward interaction, muttering about how cringe their forced connection appears. Trembling from the tense confrontation, she stares at him with anxious eyes and asks why he is there. The SUV roars into the night as the man mentions Manny's request for a ride, trapping them in a tense moving cage. He smirked about the ride being a joke, but realizes with dread that the man actually agreed to it. She anxiously asks if he has a license, but the man coldly notes that one must be 18 to drive in Korea. She screams in fear about a potential crash, but he ignores her panic, calmly telling her to just let go. The girl leans toward Jin, whispering that she knows he is not acting like his usual self. Jin remains silent, offering a subtle, unsettling smirk that reveals the sinister entity has taken control of him. The car speeds toward the dark, desolate mountains as an ominous caption vows to take them far from home, while the girl enjoys the wind. The driver laughs manically, demanding to know if she finds the reckless ride fun. Jin stares blankly and whispers that winter is starting, leaving the girl confused and deeply worried. A loud notification sound echoes in the car, causing both teenagers to look toward the front in alarm. The girl reads a message about a sixth missing girl, her expression shifting from relief to sheer terror as she realizes the growing danger. While the driver dismisses the report as mere rumors, Jin remains silent and shadowed, his cold demeanor deepening the sense of dread in the car. Jin abruptly snatches the phone from her hand, an aggressive movement that leaves her visibly startled and deeply unsettled. Furious at his rude behavior, the girl snaps at Jin to check his own phone instead of hers, her face flushed with genuine irritation. Jin stares down at his screen with an unreadable expression, muttering that he has no friends who would send him such messages. Jin's dark eyes widen in sudden realization as he reads the notification about the 6 missing girls, knowing he is hiding a dark secret. With his secret exposed by the chilling news, Jin turns his gaze toward her and demands with dark intensity, "But what about the other 2? Jin Seon sits alone in the car staring at his phone and muttering, "One moment," as a dark realization clouds his eyes. A thick, suffocating silence fills the air, emphasizing the heavy dread weighing on his mind. The screen shows a warning about a 6th missing girl, leading Jin Seon to coldly admit, "I know for sure 4 of these." The girl's voice cracks with terror as she demands, "But what about the other 2? While the mystery deepens, the girl gasps in shock as she yells, "Ah, that damn truck," while a massive vehicle looms on the mountain road. Tension spikes as the truck looms dangerously close, leaving the girl paralyzed with fear as she stares at the steel threat. The driver violently slams his foot against the dashboard, shouting, "Asshole!" to vent his frustration at the reckless truck driver. The impact of the boot against the dashboard signals a desperate and aggressive turn in their perilous journey. The father kicks the guardrail in frustration, cursing, "Damn it, this shouldn't have happened," as he inspects the car. The teenagers exchange uneasy glances before the girl asks if it is his car, to which he coldly responds, He dismissively claims the car is only for family weekend trips and plans to change the tires to cover his tracks. Surprised by his mention of family, the girl sarcastically asks if the rich also deal with rebellious children and bitter inheritance fights. The man looks away wearily and mutters that her assumption is a nasty stereotype, unmoved by her erratic personality shifts. A cold wind blows across the desolate coast as the girl suddenly exclaims with excitement about the winter sea. She spins around joyfully to admire the view, while the men watch her unpredictable behavior with clear annoyance. The man sighs at her abrupt mood swings, while the boy silently wonders why she changes her demeanor so quickly. Standing on the barren shore, the boy whispers to himself that this western sea does not even feel like the real ocean. The man tells him to be satisfied with the western sea because the eastern coast is too far away. The man sighs and tells the confused boy that there is a reason for everything, even their current bleak circumstances. Watching the fishermen, the man mockingly describes the activity as tedious, claiming people only do it for silence, thrills, or to show off gear. Jin Seon stares blankly ahead, his internal voice whispering, "I get it," as he struggles to process the man's cold detachment from the world. Jin Seon's expression darkens with realization as he admits to himself, "Come to think of it, I have never asked myself that question." Haunted by the memory of his father, Jin Seon wonders, why does Dad like to kill while trying to suppress the painful truth? The boy's melancholic thoughts are suddenly shattered when the girl cries out, "Jin Seon!" from across the beach. With a joyful grin, the girl triumphantly holds up a flapping, freshly caught fish, cutting through the grim atmosphere of the coastline. The girl proudly displays her catch as the boy watches, thinking to himself, "Ha! What a girl, she is a real warrior." In the kitchen, a woman prepares the fish and remarks that soju and sashimi are a perfect, necessary pair. The woman asserts that eating sashimi without soju is like pairing a burger with plain water, calling it an insult to the fish. The girl insists they drink Sprite instead of soju because the man has to drive and she will not let him get drunk. The boy suggests the man use self-hypnosis to imagine the Sprite is soju, but the man snaps at them for being annoying. The man spits on the ground in disgust, but the girl smiles and tells him he acts less like a bully now. The man clenches his fist in frustration and creepily mentions he cannot forget where he once saw her working. The girl scolds him for his shamelessness, shouting at him for bringing it up while he mocks her indifference. Jin watches from the shadows with a hollow expression, letting out a dry, chilling laugh in the tense air. The fish remains lie discarded on the table as the man coldly declares he is full, ending the conversation. The girl stares at the man with wary curiosity and asks why he is being kind to Jin. The man sneers with a predatory grin, coldly asking if someone really needs a reason to be kind. The girl retorts that people like him are never kind to those weaker than themselves, dismissing him as a stereotype. The man bristles as he challenges her to define him, while she insists Jin is just another victim he ignores. He questions why she pretends to be Jin's friend and mockingly claims her moral judgment makes him seem worthless. The girl stares in disbelief and asks if he is crazy, struggling to process his cold and calculating confession. He smiles wickedly and explains that he originally targeted Jin solely to exploit his father's position for personal gain. He justifies his actions by claiming that befriending Jin offers future advantages and the possibility of receiving favors in return. He smiles, adding that while survival requires a system of give and take, that was merely his initial plan for their relationship. The girl stares at him in shock, her trembling lips asking what his intentions are now as they sit in uneasy silence. The man grins condescendingly, bragging that he enjoys having Jin around, because he is entertaining and does not talk much. He laughs, noting that he enjoys when Jin snaps and finds his strange loser aura unusual for someone from a wealthy family. He coldly declares that even as a bully who enjoys beating up kids, nobody questions him when he has a loser friend. Jin stares with wide, haunted eyes as he hears them mockingly call him an interesting type, the weight of their cruelty crushing his spirit. Standing alone in the dark, Jin whispers the word friends to himself, feeling the stinging pain of their cold betrayal. The girl laughs joyfully while proposing a toast to being his only friends, unaware that her mockery pushes him deeper into the shadows. Trapped by his painful history, Jin hangs his head in defeat, mourning his reality as he whispers, "I am always feeling utterly discarded." Jin sits isolated in the corner of a silent, empty classroom, his slumped posture highlighting the crushing weight of his absolute loneliness. Jin stares ahead with traumatized eyes, his spirit reflecting the silent agony of realizing he is completely alone in the dark. His inner turmoil peaks as he remembers the cruel mockery while a chilling voice in his memory offers, "I will be your friend." The girl lightheartedly demands a Sprite as the men mockingly toast, dismissing Jin with a bored, "How annoying." With a hollow clink of glasses, they mockingly toast to Jin Seon, treating his very name like a punchline in their cruel game. His face contorted in agony, he cries through his tears, and to his stupidity, to your health as his hope finally shatters. Alone in the shadows, he curls up on the cold floor, his quiet sobs marking the painful end of his fragile trust. The jagged title Bastard looms over a dark apartment complex, casting a shadow of dread over the quiet night. A half-empty cup and a cluttered ashtray sit beside a closed book, setting an exhausted tone for the long night. The boss sits motionless with a book shielding his eyes until an underling suggests he should go home and rest. The boss lifts the book to reveal a weary smile, dismissively telling his worried subordinate not to worry. The man offers an unsettling smile, assuring his companion that he will stay at the office a little longer. His companion reluctantly accepts the decision and leaves him alone in the suffocating silence. As the footsteps fade, the man's expression drops into a dark mask of cold calculation. A shift in perspective reveals his shadowed face as he mutters that he must get her to come here. The man warns that there is no reason to get directly involved and expose himself to useless dangers. He notes that it would not be convenient for the CEO of Company G to be seen at such a dump. The man warns that suspicion toward the associate would complicate his plans, flashing a cold, menacing smile. He smirks in the shadows and whispers to himself that things are finally getting interesting as his scheme unfolds. Laughter fills the classroom while the girl checks her phone, unaware of the calculated social betrayal hidden in her messages. She stares at her screen with confusion, wondering why her chat history with the boy has mysteriously disappeared. Startled by a sudden call, the girl gasps and struggles to maintain her composure while hiding her internal panic. She forces a bright, insincere smile and claims she is joining the art club to mask her true intentions. The girl sighs heavily as the weight of her isolation begins to surface, her expression shifting toward quiet anxiety. Her eyes widen in shock as she stares at her phone, unable to comprehend the bizarre mystery displayed on the screen. A figure stands silently in the shadows of a desolate alley, waiting amidst the cold wind and looming city architecture. A disturbing message about a sticky mess appears on her phone, leaving her confused as the trap closes in. Jin stares at his phone with a flushed, wide-eyed gaze, wondering if he just had a wet dream while feeling overwhelmed by puberty. He reads the internet comments with shock and embarrassment, questioning if he is becoming a man or how he could possibly make babies. As anonymous replies confirm it is sperm, Jin stands in the hallway clutching his phone and reeling from the awkward reality of his changing body. A ghostly, serene image of the girl haunts his thoughts, and he blushes deeply while wondering why she is driving him so crazy. Jin stands alone in the shadows, clutching the mysterious packet with a trembling hand, wondering if his desperate gamble will finally pay off. He nervously grips the Bravono packet and wonders if it will work, but he is suddenly startled by a voice shouting, "Hey, Glass eye! A man corners Jin while gasping for breath, the heavy silence between them amplifying the tension as the man stares at him with suspicion. The man trembles with anxiety and blurts out a question about Jin and Kyun, leaving Jin to mutter a stunned and shocked response. The frantic man slams his hands onto Jin, screaming for an answer before calling him a little bastard. The man violently shakes Jin by the collar, demanding to know how he managed to talk to her while complaining about being a slave. Jin stares back with wide, terrified eyes, remaining completely silent in the suffocating atmosphere of the confrontation. Panting heavily, the man leans in and curses before finally declaring that he is not a slave. The man stares in absolute disbelief, his eyes wide and sweat-beaded as he stammers in confusion. Jin looms over him with a chilling smile, placing a hand on his shoulder while whispering that they are friends. Trembling with shock, the man struggles to process the situation as Jin dismissively flicks a piece of paper. Jin tells the man to grow up, while the man mumbles in disbelief about his missing wallet. With a chilling smile, Jin leans in to taunt his victim, cold and confident, by admitting he took the wallet. The man flinches in terror, his eyes wide with panic as he is shattered by Jin's sudden menacing shift. The man tries to regain control by threatening Jin, telling him to stay in his place or get hurt. Jin stands in heavy silence, his cold gaze burning into the man as he watches his enemy retreat into the distance. The school bell rings with a sharp, echoing ding-dong that cuts through the heavy air, marking the start of a tense day. Students whisper about finding Kyun in the art room, leaving Jin stunned as he coldly confirms her location with a brief thank you. An awkward silence hangs over the hallway as students whisper in shock that Jin can actually speak. Inside the quiet, sun-drenched art studio, Kyun sits peacefully painting, completely unaware of the social tension unfolding just outside her door. Jin stands at the threshold of the art room, his gaze locked onto Kyun as the weight of his recent confrontation finally settles. Unaware of the encroaching drama, Kyun remains lost in her painting, her brush moving with serene and rhythmic grace. Bathed in warm, golden afternoon light, she continues to labor over her canvas content in her isolated sanctuary of calm. The sudden realization of her presence causes Jin's heart to thump wildly against his ribs as he stands paralyzed by internal turmoil. Jin stands motionless in the hallway, his silhouette cast against the light until a sudden sharp "hey" breaks the oppressive silence. The bully towers over Jin, sneering with malice as he insults Manny Kim and his girlfriend in a grotesque display of dominance. Caught in a hostile ambush, Jin gazes up with hollow eyes as the group aggressively accuses him of stealing a wallet. The bespectacled student recoils in shock as Jin's face darkens into a chilling, wordless intensity. Veins bulging with rage, the bully screams, "Don't you have anything to say, you dickhead?" Shadows mask Jin's face as he stares back coldly and asks, "So, you've changed teams, huh?" The bespectacled student freezes in palpable fear as Jin stands silently, looming over him in the hallway. A mysterious figure steps into the frame with a dark, predatory smirk as he commands, "Come with me." Jin swallows nervously, his eyes locking into a cold intensity that fills the hallway with tension. The bully stands rigid and sweating as Jin's intense, unblinking glare drains his confidence. A mysterious stranger enters with a predatory smirk and coldly orders Jin to follow him. Jin trembles and swallows hard as he is led toward the dark facade of Byungkyo's car center. The man examines the damaged vehicle and tells Jin he must check the lines and tires to maintain control. The mechanic leans against the car and casually remarks that the repairs will take about a week due to the long queue. The teen mocks the mechanic for skipping school, but the man coldly snaps that it is none of his business. The man rubs his neck in frustration and sighs because his father needed the car for a camping trip this weekend. The teen tells the man he should have been more careful just as his phone begins to buzz. The mechanic stares at his buzzing phone, his expression shifting to sharp focus as he realizes the message's importance. A chilling silence fills the air as the mechanic stares at his screen, shifting the power dynamic of the encounter. A stranger suddenly appears and pinches the boy's cheeks, mockingly remarking that he looks surprisingly cute up close. The group looms over the terrified boy, telling him he has terrible taste and coldly ordering him to move aside. The man looms over the boy and coldly asks if he thinks Manny Kim will actually show up after they messaged him. Jin stares into the shadows, muttering to himself that this should not have happened and that Manny has no reason to come. The bespectacled bully bursts into mocking laughter, shouting that Manny has absolutely no reason to come for someone like him. The bully jeers that they are in different classes, prompting the boy to snap back and tell him to shut up. The attacker strikes the boy and then flashes an eerie, mocking grin while apologizing with a sinister chuckle. The man looms over the defenseless boy and cruelly declares that he is dead regardless of whether Manny arrives, to which the boy whispers, "No." As the bully grows irritated, a bystander panics and warns him that the boy is too fragile and might die if he is pushed too far. With cold and ruthless disregard for the boy's well-being, the attacker slams him into the ground and callously asks why he should care. Jin collapses to the ground as his attackers loom over him, one of them chillingly whispering that killing him would be fun. Jin trembles on the floor, losing all hope as he whispers to himself that it is impossible for anyone to come help him. The thug slams Jin into the concrete with a savage blow, tauntingly telling him that his run ends here. The assailant drags Jin up by his collar and sneers that one more hit will finish him, while his partner laughs at the boy's weakness. A man hauls a terrified, trembling Jin up by his collar as a girl watches the display with cold, predatory curiosity. The girl steps forward to taunt the cowering Jin about his covered eye, suggesting she should help him show his pretty face. As the girl fumbles with her lighter, Jin protests in fear, but she coldly commands him to stay still. The girl holds a blade to Jin, but a dominant newcomer intervenes, commanding her to put the lighter away, sweetheart. Manny arrives as a looming, confident figure, peering down at the battered boy with a cold, mocking smirk as he dismissively mutters, "Damn!" Manny towers over a terrified Jin, sneering with disappointment as he asks if this is everything he taught the boy. A nervous bystander standing in the shadows gulps in fear while watching the tense confrontation unfold. The attacker cracks his knuckles and taunts Manny, asking if he is ready to begin their fight. Manny stands emotionless and silent, his intimidating presence filling the entire room as he stares down at his prey. The boy stares up in terror while the two men watch the silent standoff with growing unease. Manny exhales a sharp breath and wears a sinister smirk, clearly savoring the broken state of his victim. The newcomer mockingly asks the boy what he intends to do about the girl who targeted his friend. An enraged man points at the trembling boy and demands to know why the Cyclops claimed to be his friend. The man looms over the boy with a cold glare, demanding the truth while his victim remains silent and shaken. With shadows obscuring his face, the boy remains silent as the man presses him, asking if they are truly friends. The man dismisses his cohort's pressure to fight, flashing a sinister grin while saying that they should not act like that. The antagonist mockingly claims they should resolve things peacefully with punches while delivering a brutal blow to Myungjae's stomach. Myungjae reels in painful silence, his wide eyes and trembling expression revealing the trauma of such an unexpected and violent assault. The attacker slams Myungjae to the ground, leaving him gasping for air while his shocked friend shouts his name in disbelief. Standing over the fallen boy, the attacker ignores his friend's angry insults as he prepares to unleash further punishment on his target. With a cold, sadistic grin, the aggressor raises his fists and taunts the broken boy to watch and learn. Jin stares back with hollow, wide-eyed terror, completely paralyzed by the overwhelming brutality unfolding before him. The attacker looms over the victim with a dark, menacing sneer, his face twisted in pure, unadulterated malice. The attacker coldly declares, "This is how you fight," as the scene shifts to the shadows where the victim lies, abandoned. A middle-aged man gasps in horror while the girl cries out in shock, both witnessing the brutal violence that has just occurred. The tall attacker stands over his two bloodied, defeated victims and casually scatters money as he looms over the scene in silence. The man looms over the broken Jin, fixing him with a cold, intimidating stare as he sarcastically calls out, "Hey, Jin!" Staring down at the terrified boy, the man mockingly asks, "Am I your friend, eh?" While Jin remains frozen in silence. The ruthless attacker displays a chilling smirk on his blood-spattered face, radiating pure sadism after his brutal display of dominance. Looking down from above at his broken victims, the assailant sneers, very funny, as he relishes their complete and utter defeat. The tall bully looks down at the broken Jin with a bloody smirk and mockingly asks, "Friends, eh?" Jin remains paralyzed in silence, completely overwhelmed by the crushing aftermath of the brutal beating. The ruthless attacker smirks with sadistic glee while his victims lie defeated on the floor. Looking down from above, the man sneers very funny while enjoying the sight of his broken prey. The aggressive man looms over his trembling companion and coldly threatens to smash his teeth. The bespectacled man trembles as he stammers that Jin is driving him crazy. Ignoring the plea, the man glares at his partner and demands to know if he has seen Jin lately. The man stands in stony silence while three students walk past, completely unaware of the tension. The boy chews on an eraser with a dark gaze as the man asks, "Am I your friend?" Silence hangs in the air until the boy suddenly spits the crushed eraser into his open palm. Jin clenches his fist in frustration as the girl turns around and asks him, "Huh?" He waves a shaking hand to hide his face, relieved yet anxious that she has not gone home yet. The girl stops and confronts him with concern, demanding to know who beat him up. He lies about falling down the stairs, but she scolds his clumsy excuse and drags him toward the infirmary. He begs her to wait, his eyes wide with anxiety as they head toward the infirmary. As she gently cleans his wounds, she sighs and wonders how he keeps getting hurt like this. Jin whispers a soft "thank you," his eyes hollow and weary from his recent violent encounter. The girl smirks and tells him he owes her a favor since the doctor is absent. She giggles and remarks that he looks too pathetic to tease further this time. Jin expresses surprise at her drawing hobby, but she snaps that it is her dream and demands to apply his bandage. Jin stands battered and hollow as the girl looms over him with a cruel smirk, warning him to follow her lead. Jin gazes at his trembling, blood-stained hand in stunned silence while processing the sticky remnants of his trauma. As Jin pulls his hand away with a sticky sound, the girl shifts from playful to suddenly confused, murmuring, The girl notices his disarray and teases him for being distracted, claiming he has gum stuck in his hair. The girl tilts her head in confusion to ask what, while a vacant and defeated Jin stands silently beside her. A sticky sound effect highlights the girl's shock as she discovers a gooey mess tangled deep within her own hair. Disturbed by the substance, she cries out in disgust while Jin remains silent, feigning total ignorance. She laments the nightmare of cleaning her hair, but Jin coldly ignores her and demands they leave immediately. Jin stares blankly ahead, his resolve hardening as he decides that he must change her appearance. The pair arrives at a salon called Cool Hair Beauty while the girl continues to struggle with the messy substance in her hair. As they enter the salon with a chime, the girl worries aloud about whether she has enough money to fix her hair. She laments the mess in her hair while Jin watches her with cold, silent detachment. Jin stands by her side and calmly reassures her that he will pay for the service as her knight in shining armor. The girl begrudgingly accepts his help, insisting she will pay him back as soon as possible. When the stylist asks about a haircut, Jin cold-heartedly interjects that she will also be getting her hair dyed. A dark silence falls as the girl glares at Jin in frustration, while he stares back with a vacant, chilling expression. An oppressive silence fills the salon as the empty chair waits to address the girl's ruined hair. The girl's face darkens with rage as she snaps that she cannot possibly allow him to change her hair. Jin remains eerily calm and dismisses her concerns, questioning why she is so against getting a haircut or dyeing her hair. Jin offers a chilling, detached smile, insisting that she is cute enough for everyone to like her even with dyed hair. The girl stares ahead with wide, intense eyes and coldly declares that her appearance is not the real problem. She explains with visible sadness that her grandfather has dementia and mistakenly believes she is his mother. Jin listens in stunned silence as she reveals that changing her hairstyle might cause her grandfather to no longer recognize her. A suffocating tension fills the air as the girl slumps in her chair, burdened by the emotional weight of her situation. Jin forces a weak, hollow laugh and tries to mask the awkward tension by saying he understands. The girl pierces his facade by asking if the situation is not a little bit sad. Stunned by her sudden emotional honesty, Jin freezes in place as the weight of her secret hits him. The girl looks at him with a questioning gaze while a mysterious figure reads a newspaper nearby. Hiding behind his newspaper, the man complains about the inconvenience of changing his hair because of a stupid eraser. Jin sits in silence, his pale face and bandage highlighting how shaken he feels by the heavy conversation. The man rustles his newspaper while dismissively commenting on the hair situation, leaving Jin staring back in sudden, petrified shock. The man offers a thin, detached smile with his eyes closed as he comfortably pushes his unsettling observation onto Jin. The screen fades to a somber, empty void, displaying the final haunting declaration, "Perfect, just as you are." Hiding behind a newspaper, the man complains that changing his appearance because of a stupid eraser is unnecessary. He flips the page and questions why he should dye his hair while Jin listens in suffocating silence. The man looks up with a chilling smile and begins to remark on Jin's appearance. Jin stares back with wide, hollow eyes as the man finishes his observation. The man maintains a chilling, artificial smile as he tells Jin that he is perfect just as he is. Jin sits frozen at his desk as he recognizes the man's unsettling presence from his past. Jin's eyes widen in shock as he realizes the man was at the hospital. Jin flinches as the man calmly approaches him and asks if they can talk for a moment. Jin stands frozen in the shadows with his face bandaged, struggling to suppress his dread of this confrontation. The scene shifts to the exterior of the salon, where a heavy silence underscores the threat awaiting Jin inside. A mechanical click resonates as the man turns the bathroom doorknob, signaling a terrifying loss of control for the trapped boy. The man looms over a trembling Jin inside the cramped restroom, their heartbeats sinking with the suffocating tension of the trap. Jin stares up with wide, sweat-beaded eyes and demands in a trembling voice, "How did you know I was here?" The man stands in stony silence, his shadow masking his expression as he looms over Jin with predatory intent. Rising from the couch with a slow, heavy motion, the man stalks toward the bathroom door to seal Jin's fate. Staring at the haunting painting, the man clicks the mechanism, his calm reflection hiding a dark obsession that whispers, "He has become a man." The man stares intensely at his painting, his stony silence heavy with an unvoiced, ominous question for his trapped prey. A mop hangs ominously against the wall, serving as a silent witness as the man coldly asks, "So, here we are, at the police station." The officer confirms that nobody was sent to the apartment, leaving Jin in stunned silence. Jin recalls the chilling realization that the police did not visit, while the officer offers to check the area again for his safety. The man maintains a chilling, artificial calm, dismissing Jin's rising panic with a hollow reassurance as he utters, "No, don't worry." Jin stands vulnerable in the room with his shoulders slumped while the man lurks in the shadows behind him. Jin narrows his eyes, his face etched with sharp distrust as he confronts the intruder. "So, were you keeping an eye on me?" After a tense silence, Jin forces a bitter laugh, saying, "I had heard you were busy working on a new project." Ha ha. Jin trembles as he furiously demands to know why the man was so curious about him. The man stands silent, his expression unreadable and cold as he stares back at the panicked Jin. Jin screams in desperation, demanding to know why the man never asked about the cut on his face. The man coldly commands Jin to speak, prompting the boy to break down and ask what he truly is to him. Jin struggles to breathe through jagged gasps while the man looms over him in suffocating silence. The man stares down with a chilling, hollow look and finally breaks the silence by coldly asking a trembling Jin, "Do you like it?" Jin recoils in shock as the man leans in close to whisper a disturbing question about Kyun Yoon. Jin stammers a fearful denial while the man lets out a cruel, mocking laugh at his distress. Jin stares up with wide, terrified eyes, trembling as the man looms over him with cold malice. The man erupts into a harsh, mocking laugh, clearly enjoying the sight of Jin's emotional breakdown. The man sneers at Jin's defiance, claiming he always knew this confrontation would eventually occur. Jin gasps in shock as the man coldly looms over him and whispers that he is completely useless. Jin freezes in terror as the man closes the distance, making the boy realize he is truly trapped. The man steps forward like a predator, sneering at the trembling boy and asking if he thinks he is tough. The man leans in to intimidate Jin, taunting him by asking if he intends to report him to the police. The man mocks Jin's survival, whispering a chilling threat about the boy's inability to live without him. The man looms over the terrified boy, whispering a chilling reminder, "Remember, if you're still alive, it is only thanks to me." Jin trembles as he processes the threat, whispering back, "Am I alive because of you?" Overwhelmed by a surge of suffocating rage and helplessness, Jin's hand tightens into a desperate, white-knuckled fist. Breaking his fearful silence, Jin looks up with cold resolve, firmly declaring, "This is not true." The man stares down at Jin with a hollow, menacing expression, his silent gaze demanding an explanation while leaving the boy in shock. Jin's face twists in agony as he screams, "Don't you remember?" While desperately clutching the man's striped collar, desperation peaks as Jin lunges forward, clawing through the dark space to grasp at the figure just beyond his reach. Jin flings himself backward in a sudden burst of motion, his frantic eyes reflecting a realization that shatters his reality. Jin looks up with a broken, vacant expression, his face cast in deep shadows that mirror the hollow silence between them. The man stands tall in his striped shirt, his presence looming over Jin like a heavy, inescapable weight. Jin reaches out with a shaking hand to grab the man's striped collar, his eyes burning with accusation as he whispers that he tried to kill him. The man stands deathly still as Jin grips his shirt, their proximity highlighting the lethal power dynamic and their dark, violent history.